Watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top two for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tonight as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christie's, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tonight. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hey, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting, of course, live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, the Israeli military says it is checking the possibility it has killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, and he is believed to be the mastermind of the October the 7th terrorist attacks. And we'll bring you all the latest updates on this developing story. And in just a few hours' time, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch will battle it out on GB News' exclusive event, Decision Time, the race to lead. Who will be crowned the Tory leader in a scrap that some are calling the last chance to save the Tories? And tributes are pouring in following the tragic death of One Direction star Liam Payne, who has died, aged just 31. We'll speak to the journalist who knew him best, plus his close friend, former SAS man Ant Middleton. And Russia is reportedly set to call up 10,000 troops from Kim Jong-un's North Korean army to reinforce its ranks in the Ukraine. But with zero combat experience and a history of firing missiles harmlessly into the sea, is this a sign of Putin's desperation? And that's all coming up in your next hour. Well, welcome to the show on this historic day. In 4 hours' time, Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick go head-to-head in the GB News exclusive leadership contest. Who do you want to win and why? Can either of them stop Sir Keir Starmer? They both have said no deal with Nigel Farage. Robert Jenrick went a stage further and said he wants to make Nigel redundant. He wants to get rid of reform. Can they do that? Is there any hope for either of them? Who would you vote for? Let me know. And the usual way to do that is gbnews.com/your say. And now it's time for your headlines. And here's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 3 o'clock. These are your headlines. The Israeli military is investigating the possibility that it has killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar in an operation in Gaza targeting 3 militants. In a statement, the military noted that the identities of those killed have yet to be confirmed and stated there were no indications that Israeli hostages were present at the site. If confirmed, Sinwar's death would mark a significant victory for Israel amid a series of high-profile assassinations of enemy leaders in recent months. As the architect of the October 7th attack on Israel that ignited the current conflict, Sinwar has long been a top target for Israeli forces. Hamas has not yet commented on the reports. Now, the family of former One Direction star Liam Payne has expressed their heartbreak following his death at the age of 31. In a statement released through a spokeswoman, his family remembered Liam as kind, funny and a brave soul. Fans have gathered outside the hotel in Buenos Aires, where he died, lighting candles and leaving flowers in an impromptu vigil to pay tribute to the music icon. Liam rose to fame as part of One Direction, one of the biggest pop groups in the world, before their indefinite hiatus in 2016. In other news, North Korea is believed to be sending its troops to enter the war against Ukraine. The Ukrainian president's been speaking to NATO leaders during a meeting in Brussels, calling for sanctions on Pyongyang. Volodymyr Zelensky said he had information that up to 10,000 North Korean specialist troops were being prepared to enter the war. The Kremlin has branded the claims as fake news. Security sources report several thousand North Korean troops are currently training at military bases in eastern Russia. Meanwhile, thousands of UK troops are being put on standby to deploy to Estonia's border with Russia, part of a crucial new agreement signed by Defence Secretary John Healey. It means the Army's 4th Brigade will remain on high readiness to defend against rising tensions from the ongoing war in Ukraine. Currently, about 1,000 British soldiers are in Estonia, and if called upon, the 4th Brigade could arrive within 10 days, equipped with advanced tanks and missile systems. As NATO ministers gather in Brussels, the Defence Secretary said the new deal will enhance the group's defences in the face of escalating global threats.
The UK's unshakable commitment to NATO could never be more important. And at a time of growing Russian aggression and increasing wider threats, today we will make the commitment to reinforce NATO's eastern flank with a new plan alongside Estonia for our forces there. And we will make a commitment, a UK commitment, to bolstering the future of Europe's defences.
Now, a second body has been discovered following a large explosion in Newcastle, where a 7-year-old boy tragically lost his life. The body, believed to be a man in his 30s, was located in the debris by emergency crews. Drone footage shows the wreckage with roofs collapsed and debris strewn across the street. Northumbria police confirmed that 6 others have been hospitalised, with one man in a critical but stable condition. The investigation into the cause of the explosion is ongoing, with police urging the public to refrain from speculation. And Kemi Badenoch says her bid for Conservative leadership is a grassroots campaign taking aim at her rival Robert Jenrick's more media-focused approach. As the two contenders compete to replace Rishi Sunak, the Shadow Housing Secretary says the Tories need to regain voters lost to Reform and the Liberal Democrats. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick's outlined his vision for a smaller state and lower taxes, arguing that returning the spend on benefits to pre-pandemic levels could help a tax cut. From 7 p.m. tonight, they'll make their pitches to Tory members in a special programme moderated by our political editor, Christopher Hope. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. The Israeli military says it is checking the possibility it has killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, and he is believed to be the mastermind of the October the 7th Hamas terrorist attacks. We're going to now speak with GB News' Home and Security Editor Mark White for the latest. Mark, this would be a significant victory if it's the case. He's the guy thought to be the big mind behind October the 7th, that terror invasion by Hamas. Tell us more.
If confirmed, this is an enormous story for Israelis. This was the man, the mastermind behind those horrific attacks on the 7th of October last year, in which 1,200 people were slaughtered, more than 200 were taken hostage, 100 still being held hostage. To the Israelis, Yahya Sinwar is their bin Laden. It's difficult to understate just how significant this story would be if the Israeli military, as they believe, have killed this man. And let's be clear, the Israeli military clearly believe that they've killed him, or they wouldn't even be saying that they're looking into the possibility that he's been killed. I've seen photos that are out there now circulating on social media that have clearly come from the IDF. And Yahya Sinwar has very distinctive features, and to me, it absolutely looks very clear that this is Yahya Sinwar. So what is happening now is that DNA samples have been taken from that body. They've been sent off to give that 100% confirmation that this is indeed their man. The Israelis, Martin, have had some very significant successes in recent months. They have killed, we believe they've not admitted that they took part in this, but the political leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, who was in the Iranian capital, Tehran, just last month. They killed the leader of that other terrorist group to the north of Israel in southern Lebanon, Hassan Nasrallah, the Hezbollah leader. And they've taken out many other senior Hezbollah leaders as well, but none bigger in terms of the significance, the symbolism, the very fact that he was the man, the inspiration and the brain behind this absolutely horrific event just over a year ago in Israel.
Incredible story, Yahya Sinwar there. The Israeli bin Laden, as you said there, Mark White, will await those DNA results. Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Pleasure. Now, in just a few hours' time, in fact, just short of 4 hours' time, the Conservative leadership contenders Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch will be live on GB News in the first televised leadership event where they will face tough questions from our political editor, Chris Hope, Conservative Party members and you, the great GB News viewer at home, on why they should be made the new leader and why they will be the best to take on Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer as leader of the opposition. I'm now joined in the studio by the Conservative MP Mark Francois, who is backing Robert Jenrick for leader, and also GB News reporter Adam Cherry, who is with me in the studio. Gentlemen, welcome. Mark, I'm going to start with you.
Hi.
Hands up. The last time you were in, I said it looks like the wheels are coming off the Team Jenrick campaign. I was wrong. You were right. You said you've been around for a long time and things can change. They certainly have. Tell us why you think Mr. Jenrick is the right man for the job.
Well, thank you. It's good of you to say that. I mean, the wheels are still on the wagon, aren't they? And I think, Robert was the comeback kid. And he did surprise more than one media pundit. I mean, I think he's the best man for the job. There are several reasons. One, he's the man with a plan. He's been very clear on a whole number of policy initiatives. He's given party members a good idea of what he stands for. Perhaps most memorably on the European Convention on Human Rights. He's been very clear that he wants to leave the ECHR. A number of the other candidates had much more changeable positions. Robert was absolutely consistent from the start, and I think that will go down with party members, particularly when we see press reports this morning that Labour are considering what in effect would be an amnesty for about 60,000 migrants. So I don't think Tory parties members would be pleased with an amnesty on that scale. So Robert's got the plan to tackle that. And also a completely different point. The Conservative Party has been through a torrid time in the last few years. It's pointless me trying to pretend it hasn't. There are 121 MPs left. Historically, our biggest ever defeat. We've got to bring this family back together. If we're going to get back into government and defeat Labour and Reform, we need some healing here. And I think of the two candidates, Robert has the best personality in order to bring people back together in a, shall we say, a non-confrontational way.
Can I ask a question? Where's Kemi? It seems to me that in recent days, since she made that faux pas, let's face it, about maternity pay, she's done a bit of a disappearing act, bit of a political Houdini. Some might say, a bit of a Joe Biden. Is she in a basement somewhere? I know she's going to turn up tonight, but she's been conspicuous by her absence on the media scene.
Well, I mean, you'd have to ask her or her team about their tactics. But
is that deliberate, is what I'm saying? Like, do they want to keep her away from the media in case she does another maternity pay-style gaffe?
In the famous words of House of Cards, you might think that. You might very well think that. I couldn't possibly comment. But what I can say is that Robert Jenrick has done a great deal of media. He's been out there, you know, he's done the tough interviews. He's done the Camilla Tominys. He's done the Laura Kuenssbergs. You know, here is a candidate who, if you're going to be leader of the opposition and one day Prime Minister, because hopefully we're picking a future Conservative Prime Minister, you've got to be able to go head-to-head in those studios with some of the toughest interviewers in the business. And in the last week, Robert Jenrick has done that, and perhaps his opponent has not. Now, their tactics is a matter for them, but I'm very confident that we can put our candidate up, even against you, Martin, and that he would give a good account of himself.
Well, no, always get a fair hearing on GB News, as you know. I want to bring Adam Cherry in momentarily now about a poll out today, Electoral Calculus.
Yeah.
They've done a poll of the two leaders to see who'd be best fared to beat the Labour Party and also deliver on that promise, particularly Robert Jenrick made, of making reform redundant. But it seems, Adam, that neither of them are going to be a rip snorter of a leader who can do away with Sir Keir Starmer.
Yeah, and I'm sure what Robert Jenrick, and maybe Mark, what you might jump in and say is, but there was also a poll that showed that Robert Jenrick would deny Keir Starmer his majority, I think, if there were an election tomorrow, take it down to 311?
That's right. Correct.
Right, but then what you're left with then, it's a Lib-Lab coalition, surely. You wouldn't want that either. So I think, to your point, Martin, it seems that they still have a massive way to go here. You could argue, actually, that, you know, once the public gets to know them as leader of the opposition, and then whoever it is, say Robert, becomes more comfortable in the role, they actually chip away at that. But you still have a serious problem with the right. And if you're making reform redundant, can you do that in 5 years? Can you
I think, look, there's a long way to go, as you quite rightly say. But, you know, this was a poll of over 6,000 members of the public, not Tory party members. So this is their kind of first impression, having looked at the two candidates, if you like. And the critical thing, and you said it yourself, is that under that poll, Robert Jenrick already, he's not even leader of the opposition yet, would deny Keir Starmer an overall majority at a general election. Under Kemi, according to that poll, Labour would still have an outright majority in the Commons. So I would take that as a very positive start. In terms of reform, we cannot go into the next general election with an indistinct policy on immigration and asylum. You could argue our policy was indistinct. I mean, I got that on doorsteps night after night. Yeah. Roberts is extremely clear. He wants to withdraw from the ECHR because it's the only way that we can stop the boats.
I want to ask you about the differences. We've got to talk about Nigel Farage. He's the elephant in the room. This polling today shows that neither of the candidates will wipe out reform. In fact, they're predicted to put on 20 seats, whoever becomes the new leader out of this pair. 24 seats under Robert Jenrick, 25 seats from 5 under Kemi Badenoch. And yet, Robert Jenrick said he'd like to make them redundant, but he's talking about getting a certain Mr Rees-Mogg as party chairman if he were to become the leader. Jacob has been very complimentary, almost having the rose between his teeth, almost putting on his finest cologne to court Nigel Farage with some sort of deal. Could that be a part of the package?
Well, if it's Jacob, it'll be very upmarket cologne. I can speak to that. Look, I don't think we get back into government by insulting reform. They filled a gap in the market that you could argue we'd left.
Do you think that threat is going to recede simply by rearranging the captain of the ship, or is that still an iceberg for you?
Well, I think it's a challenge. I mean, I've known Nigel Farage for years. Individually, he and I have always got on. Yeah. You know, on the Brexit side of the argument, we were pretty much soulmates in terms of us both passionately wanting to leave the European Union. But, you know, if we are going to be up against reform at the next general election, we're going to need very distinct policies. And I think on some of those issues, particularly immigration and asylum, Robert's policy positions are far more distinct than Kemi's. I don't say that to disrespect her. I just believe that to be true. So the best counter to reform would be to have a Conservative leader who's got very robust and clear policies on the issues that reform did well out of last time. I hope that's a reasonable answer to your question.
It is. Now, very, very quickly, marks out of 10, how confident your man is going to nab it tonight?
I'm not going to prejudge the result, but I'm sure Robert will give a very good account of himself, and I'm sure Chopper will chair it very, very well indeed. But for all the reasons we've just been discussing, I think you'll find that Jenrick does pretty well, and hopefully Michael Gove will give him credit for it.
Great stuff. Mark Francois, Adam Cherry, great start to the show. Thank you very much. And a quick reminder, that event is exclusively live on GB News tonight. There it is, Decision Time, the race to lead, live from 7 p.m. tonight, only on GB News. Chaired by Chris Oban. He'll be in the studio 5:15, tossing the coin to see who goes first. Don't miss it. Moving on now, because Liam Payne's family has released a statement saying they are heartbroken at their loss. They said Liam will forever live in our hearts and will remember him for his kind, funny and brave soul. Payne's death was confirmed by emergency responders yesterday after he fell from his hotel balcony in Buenos Aires in Argentina. As tributes pour in for the former One Direction singer, he's been remembered for his kindness and his compassion. Well, we can now speak with the former showbiz editor at the Daily Express, Lee Purvis. Lee, welcome to the show. A sense of huge shock around this, of course, taken away far too soon. But, of course, Liam Payne was a young man not without his troubles. Tell us more.
That's right. So I remember the very first time I met Liam and interviewed him when he was a young teenager, and actually watched very closely at the levels of pressure that fame brought with him throughout his career. Now, even as recent as 2021, he did give an interview where he gave insight into the health struggles that he was having, some of the battles. He talked about having to get help at a clinic in America for these troubles. He talked about the pressures. He made reference to one time on tour with One Direction that he'd get stuck into the minibar to drink as much alcohol as possible whilst his management were dealing with the crowds and the fans outside. So he had alluded to various mental health problems and difficulties. You know, the level of fame that him himself and his other peers from One Direction, the level of fame and scrutiny that those boys endured over their careers, and indeed right up until his final moments, was just astonishing.
And Lee, of course, his solo career didn't reach the same levels of success as other members of One Direction. There are rumours of potential lawsuits from previous girlfriend who was threatening to go public on the intimate details of their relationship. So all of this, a huge weight on a young man's shoulders. And we know, as you say, had a prevalence, for how should you put it, the celebrity lifestyle.
Absolutely. And I think going alongside with everything you've just referenced, you know, there were things happening behind the scenes, the lawsuit being one of which with an ex-partner that we know about. Obviously, Liam has a 7-year-old son with Cheryl, as in previous Cheryl Cole. There has been a lot of upheaval in his personal life. It's been a real emotional roller coaster. And he was always quite open about that. But you'll imagine the pressures of fame as well, perhaps seeing those bandmates that, you know, have been like brothers to you for so long. Perhaps you're perceiving that they're doing better than you, you know, when it comes to reaching for the stars and fame. You know, there's always been a pressure there right from the word go. It's an absolute tragedy. You know, the statement that the family have put out today, couldn't say it better. I couldn't say it better myself, having met him on several occasions. You know, he was such a kind and very funny and so talented person. And I think he was also very humble and quite open. And I think if you look at the fans that surround him, he's got something like 33 million followers on X. You know, Simon Cowell's got 10.3. Just to put things in perspective, there's almost like a bit of a Beatlemania when it comes to Liam's fans, and certainly all One Direction fans, loyal to the nth degree. And I think also, you know, this whole new generation of fans and the generation of One Direction, and of course the birth of Liam Payne going solo as a solo artist, was a real new area for him to pursue.
Thank you very much for your reflections there on the life and career of Liam Payne. Lee Purvis, thank you very much for joining us on GB News. Now, coming up, we'll be discussing a new change of tactics from people smugglers as they increasingly are going back to basics and returning to vehicles as a result of the small boats crackdown. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Business News Channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
You could, if you're getting a bit bored later on and you've got some free time, tune in to Friends. Do you remember that?
It's on somewhere in the world all the time.
Probably one of those
incredible.
Obscure TV channels.
It's a big anniversary today, because apparently today was 30 years ago, was when it first hit the screens.
In 1994. Just before, or just after I was born, 89 me. The show ran for 10 series, becoming one of the most popular sitcoms of all time, and it scored numerous accolades, including 62 Primetime Emmy nominations. Joining us now in the studio to talk everything Friends and the big anniversary is showbiz reporter Steph Tetchy and my friend as well.
Happy Friends-iversary, guys. Yes, today is quite a monumental day for one of the most incredible sitcoms to ever hit our TV screens.
That it's on somewhere in the world.
There's millions of people around the world who are watching reruns, watching either streaming of Friends, and it doesn't get boring for people. I think, 30 years later, just that, it's such a simple concept. 6 New Yorkers just following their lives and their friendships. It proved a hit with loads of viewers worldwide.
The casting was super.
It was so incredible. And the thing is, these were all fresh faces at the time. It wasn't like they picked, people who were at the top of the game then. And I think it was such a hit with viewers is because they became our friends as well over the years. But obviously today is plagued with a bit of poignancy because, there is one friend that is missing. And the creators of the show, Martha Kaufman and David Crane, saying that today is a bit fraught for both the cast because of Matthew Perry's passing. And he was known as one of the funniest friends, as most people would describe him as. And so today is kind of marred with sadness.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It's 3:25. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, yet more bad news in Britain's failing ability to stop illegal arrivals as people smugglers are now turning to alternative routes. They're going back to basics to avoid the small boats crackdown. Because asylum seekers are paying gangs to hide them in vehicles, with 3 in 10 asylum claims now being made by small boat arrivals compared with 4 in 10 in the year before. And this comes as the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is planning on waving through over 60,000 applications to ease the asylum backlog predicted by the Refugee Council in new figures out today. Well, I'm now joined by the human rights lawyer and the great friend of the show, David Hay. David, always a pleasure and never a chore. Let's start with these figures. So easing the backlog sounds great. But the trouble is, almost all of those people will be granted the right to remain in the UK, won't they? So surely, if we ease the backlog, we're simply waving in more and more people into Britain.
Good afternoon, Martin. You're right. It will be effectively an amnesty, and that number obviously will be more because the backlog is more than that. So effectively, we are doing just that. We're getting them off the waiting list, as it were, and into the country. Now, the reality is the majority of them, in any event, would probably get asylum under the current laws. There would just be a long wait, of course, which the taxpayers funding the accommodation for that. So the Labour Party obviously want to reduce that cost, but the inevitability is that will mean a significant number of people in the country reliant on local councils' facilities.
And as far as the figures on on the asylum goes, it's 62,000 that will be waved through. That's more than half of the 118,882 currently waiting to be allowed to stay in the UK. But as you say, David, that's half of them will be granted at the first application. The rest will go into some form of appeal. And very, very few actually end up getting kicked out of the country, right? What's about 5-6%?
Absolutely. I mean, you're looking, I think you're generally looking at more than 100,000 that will be coming in very, very, very soon if there is a form of amnesty. That's the reality of the situation. One would then hope, though, that the government uses that to create a fast, efficient asylum review system, which we don't have at the moment. Whether that happens or not, anyone will know.
And the second part of this story today, the percentile, it's only 3 in 10 asylum seekers now came over small boats versus 4 out of 10 last year. But of course, the absolute number has increased. Small boat crossings in 2024 now totals 27,509 versus 26,116 this time last year. So the percentage might be less, but the overall number is bigger. And getting to the second point, now they're going back to basics almost before pre-2018, and they're going back to getting people in the backs of lorries and getting them through the channel, getting them over on ferries.
Well, absolutely, Martin. It's just, effectively it's another day, another nightmare immigration story for the government. And, once you plug one hole, once you stop and strengthen the border and focus on, as they're doing on small boat arrivals, of course they're going to look, the gangs are going to look for other areas, and coming across on trucks has been there for a very long time, and that would seem maybe easier at the moment. But again, the government needs to ensure that they're providing as much support to lorry drivers to stop that from happening. And are they doing that at the moment? And that will obviously need the cooperation of France and other countries like Spain where they come across. So there's more work to be done there, and I don't see that being done at the moment.
And there's an astonishing story, you probably saw it last week, of a couple who went to France to get some antiques. And when they got back to Blighty, they found an asylum seeker in the back of their wagon and they got prosecuted. It's like a scene from Only Fools and Horses where they found Gary in the back of the wagon, except in real life. And the couple found themselves on the receiving end.
It's absurd. When people are genuinely not at fault, that we shouldn't be targeting British people for that. They'd already done a very good job, I think. I read the story of preventing people coming across, and it was not something they couldn't prevent. And that's the problem. The government needs to be providing support to stop people getting on these trucks themselves. But there really isn't support. It's down to the truck drivers and the people in vans with antiques, and that really isn't their job. But that, of course, will require work with France, work with Spain. Whether or not that will happen, we'll see.
Yeah, David Hay, and well done for mentioning truck drivers. Loads of them get in touch with us here at GB News, and they find themselves being blamed, being prosecuted, being fined, a huge amount of stress, and all the times they've got no idea whatsoever about their unwanted cargo on the back of their wagon. David Hay, always an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, looking smart as ever. Thank you. There's lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock. In 13 days' time, Labour is set to unleash the biggest tax raid in history. And we'll be discussing whether anyone is truly safe. That's next. But first, here's your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Thanks, Martin. Good afternoon. It's 3:31. These are your headlines. We start with some breaking news. A Tory councillor's wife has been jailed for 31 months for inciting racial hatred on X on the day of the Southport attacks. Lucy Connolly, married to Conservative councillor Raymond Connolly, posted a violent message on X calling for mass deportation and arson against hotels housing immigrants. She wrote the post on the day 3 young girls were killed in a knife attack in Southport. The post was deleted after 2 hours, and she later apologised for acting on false and malicious information and appeared to delete her X account. Members of Israel's Security Cabinet have been informed that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar is very likely dead after an operation in Gaza targeting 3 militants. Meanwhile, Israeli TV stations are also reporting his death. In a statement, the IDF said that the identities of those killed have yet to be confirmed and say there were no indications that Israeli hostages were present at the site of the attack. If confirmed, the 62-year-old's death would mark a significant victory for Israel amid a series of high-profile assassinations of enemy leaders in recent months. Believed to be the architect of the October 7th attack on Israel that ignited the current conflict, Sinwar has long been a top target for Israeli forces. Hamas has not yet commented on the reports. The family of One Direction star Liam Payne has expressed their heartbreak following his death at the age of 31. In a statement released through a spokeswoman, his family remembered Liam as kind, funny and a brave soul. Fans have gathered outside the hotel in Buenos Aires, where he died, lighting candles and leaving flowers in an impromptu visual to pay tribute to the music icon. Liam rose to fame as part of One Direction, one of the biggest pop groups in the world, before their indefinite hiatus in 2016. In other news now, thousands of UK troops are being put on standby to deploy to Estonia's border with Russia, part of a crucial new agreement signed by Defence Secretary John Healey. It means the Army's 4th Brigade will remain on high readiness to defend against rising tensions from the ongoing war in Ukraine. Currently, about 1,000 British soldiers are in Estonia, and if called upon, the 4th Brigade could arrive within 10 days, equipped with advanced tanks and missile systems. As NATO ministers gather in Brussels, the Defence Secretary said the new deal will enhance the group's defences in the face of escalating global threats.
The UK's unshakable commitment to NATO could never be more important. And at a time of growing Russian aggression and increasing wider threats, today we will make the commitment to reinforce NATO's eastern flank with a new plan alongside Estonia for our forces there. And we will make a commitment, a UK commitment, to bolstering the future of Europe's defences.
And King Charles and Queen Camilla are heading to Australia for a shortened tour following His Majesty's cancer diagnosis earlier this year. Doctors advise curtailing the trip, cutting out a visit to New Zealand and adjusting other parts of the schedule. The King is also pausing his cancer treatment during the 11-day overseas visit. While down under, their schedule includes a review of the Royal Australian Navy in Sydney and meetings with top cancer experts before continuing on to Samoa. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, if you want to get in touch with me at GB News, you know what to do. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay. Today, I'm asking you, who would you like to win tonight's leadership head-to-head on GB News at 7 o'clock? Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick? Let me know, and I'll read out the best of the messages a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A brighter day today for most of us and fine with that, but some showers are still knocking about, especially across western parts because of an old occluded front that's moving in here. Another weather front's clearing from Shetland and there's still heavy rain continuing here, but that will tend to ease off into the afternoon with some cloud remaining otherwise. Plenty of sunny spells across the rest of the UK. And the best of any sunshine will be across the northeast of the mainland of Scotland, eastern and southeastern England. Further west, a bit more cloud and some showers, but feeling pleasant enough with light winds and highs in any sunny spells of 17 or 18 Celsius. Then moving through the evening, any showers tend to fade away for a time, although they will continue across western Scotland as the sun goes down, drier towards the east with some late clear spells. And for Northern Ireland as well, plenty of fine weather as we end the afternoon and go into the evening. England and Wales, largely clear and dry, just 1 or 2 remaining showers there for Wales. Temperatures at 6 o'clock, around 13 or 14 Celsius. Then, many places drier for a time overnight and under clear spells, with a lot of moisture on the ground still. Fairly widespread mist and fog will form, particularly across the Midlands, eastern and southern England, and some patchy hill fog further north. Temperatures dipping to the mid to high single figures, but it is going to be a murky start to the day. Some poor visibility could cause some issues on the roads during the morning. That mist and fog slow to clear in places, but by mid-morning, I think it will be lifting into cloud and clearing. Some decent sunny spells then for parts of the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England. Further west, the cloud builds, rain moves in, and it turns very windy in northwest Scotland.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. To Scotland, to East Ayrshire and between Newmilns and Darville, the West Main Street there, the A71, is still closed both ways. There's been a two-vehicle collision, so delays either side of the closure point. A flooding affecting many areas straddling the Welsh-English border. East of Shrewsbury, the A49 closed both ways between the A5 at Preston Island and Sundorne Island. Coed Dinas in Powys in Wales, between the Sambre and Calais roundabout and the square encompassing Kilkenny, with the A490 closed both ways for flooding, as is the A438 between Letton and Willersley. If you're heading for the eastbound side of the M27 around Portsmouth in Hampshire, just around junction 12, the M275 turn-off, there's a lane shut there for the ongoing emergency repairs. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top two for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tonight as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision Time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tonight. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:39. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, in just 13 days' time, Labour is set to unleash the biggest tax raid in history. Panicked pensioners are withdrawing their funds. Motorists are bracing themselves for green tariffs on petrol cars and, of course, more fuel duty hikes. Shareholders are fearful of a 45% tax on their profits. Will anybody be safe from Labour's 50 billion quid tax grab? Well, I'm now rejoined in the studio by our man Adam Cherry, GB News reporter. Adam, welcome back. Let's start with shares.
Yeah.
Right. If you earn money, every penny of it is taxed. If you want to put it into shares, and by the way, owning shares isn't the preserve of Gordon Gekko. My dad got made redundant as a coal miner. He got a lump sum, he put it in some shares. Yeah. People do it. People were greatly encouraged to buy shares in previous governments. Now, Rachel Reeves is talking about aligning the capital gains tax on any profit you make with your income tax. So it could be as high as 45%. Britain's biggest stockbroker, Hargreaves Lansdown, has said this will push a generation of investors to extinction. You take a risk and you lose, that's on you. Take a risk and you win, we want 45% of your money. Yeah. Where is the incentive for people to get on, save, take care of themselves? That's those who invest in shares. Pensioners are pulling their pots out. It seems nobody, Adam Cherry, is happy with the forthcoming budget.
Oh, that's right. No, including cabinet ministers, by the way, which we'll come to in a second. I think part of the reason they're going down this rabbit hole really is because they were boxed in by their own manifesto when they said they wouldn't raise national insurance, income tax or VAT, working people. Now, it turns out actually they can raise national insurance, and we'll discuss that as well shortly, but they had limited levers that they can pull, and this is probably, in their minds, the easiest one they can get away with. Because you say, people, it's not just the preserve of Gordon Gekko, but it is a relatively small tax base that will sell shares in the next year or so. So they think they can get away with it and pay a relatively small political price. But it just goes to show that the income tax and the national insurance, the working people thing has created such an issue for them. Not least because now they're saying, actually, national insurance, when we said we weren't going to raise it, you read the manifesto slightly wrong. If you read the small print, you'll see that actually we meant we're not going to raise national insurance on employees, but on employers, we might come after that and raise about 9 or 10 billion quid. Apparently that's not a tax on working people.
Well, they said themselves, Rachel Reeves said in 2022 that said this proposed tax hike by the Tories was a jobs tax. It would mean that employers couldn't afford to give pay rises because they're paying extra NI. It is a tax on working people, no matter how you dress it up.
Funny that, isn't it? Yeah, I mean that was when Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor, and now here we are. She's in the Treasury and having to make the same sorts of decisions. And I was in the lobby briefing today in number 9 Downing Street, and we were talking about all of this, and overnight we've seen these briefings, but the cabinet ministers are really upset that they're having their departmental spending cut in real terms by quite a significant amount, up to 20% in some places.
Which kind of ministers? Who's got the hump?
Oh, well, so it's, at least, there might be more than this, but at least it's the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner. So if even your Deputy Prime Minister is upset about your budget, then, I don't think many other people are going to be particularly happy about it.
Why are they upset? Because it looks like austerity, or because their departments are going to suffer, or a bit of both?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of both, right? So, again, actually, this came up as well. What does it mean by austerity? Because everyone in the Treasury is saying, we're not returning to austerity. In fact, Keir Starmer is saying this. No return to austerity. We need to invest to grow. And that's their central mission. But if you're cutting these departments, then that sounds like doublespeak. How does that work? Define austerity. And the spokesman said he will not speak on behalf of the Chancellor, but clearly we need to invest at some stage. But as I said, these cabinet ministers are still in a huff about this. The overall spending envelope, so the overall size of the pie, if you like, is set. The Office of Budget Responsibility, they have that now, the watchdog. But individual departments are still haggling, so there's still some disgruntlement within the departments which is not being settled.
Adam Cherry, it wouldn't be a Labour budget without there being a net zero nightmare somewhere hidden in the small print, and we're getting more of that in terms of an extra hike on petrol cars. Now, we saw this with gas boilers. Rather than making heat pumps cheaper, we'll make gas boilers more expensive. They're doing the same with petrol cars. Not enough they're banning them altogether by 2035, Adam. They also want to whack a premium on them while they're still around to try and force us to buy EVs.
I know. I mean, is this an Ed Miliband project? It sounds like the sort of thing he'd be interested in. Look, fuel duty comes up every year, and it's been frozen for a long time. It looks like now they're deciding, you know what, now's the time to go for it.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a forthcoming war on motorists like we've never seen before. In fact, I'll be joined by Howard Cox later in the show, who held an event in Parliament yesterday. He invited hundreds of MPs, and I won't spoil his thunder, but let's just say it wasn't very well attended by the Labour side of the House when it came to them backing cutting fuel duty. What might that tell us about October 30th? Adam Cherry, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me again in the studio. Cheers. Now, moving on, because the Israeli military said it is checking the possibility it has killed the Hamas leader, Yahya Sinwar, and that's the man who's believed to be the mastermind of the October the 7th Hamas terror attacks. And we'll be bringing you all the latest updates on this developing story in just a moment. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Sleep Report 2024 is based on a comprehensive survey conducted all across the country, and the report found that over half the population, get this, falls short of the recommended 7+ hours of required sleep each night. And shockingly, 1 in 4 of us is getting 5 hours or less. And that includes you, doesn't it?
Yes, I'm very bad at sleep. 4 or 5, I'd say.
That's
awful. A bit like
awful.
Maggie Thatcher. What would you get on average?
I'd say at least 6. 7 probably average.
That's probably not good. I think you probably need 8. Well, almost half of Brits rate their sleep quality as 5 out of 10 or lower.
Dr Manesh Shah and Dr Sita Shah joins us now to tell us all about the sleep and how Brits are struggling. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
First questions to you both. How many hours do you both get?
God, I think it varies. I try and hit that 7 hours of sleep.
Why are Brits so bad at getting sleep, especially in terms of hours? 4 or 5 hours for me, 6 hours for you. It's the same for everybody out there in the UK. We're just not going to bed early enough. Is it as simple as that? Or is it slightly more complicated?
Yeah, so I think the key is to establish a good routine. So waking up at the same time every day, making sure that you're going to sleep at the same time every day, and being quite sort of rigid and strict with yourself when it comes to those timings.
And also, it's not just the length of, I get to say 7 hours, it's the quality, isn't it? You've got different phases of sleep.
Yeah.
Just explain those. Is it, as far as I remember, REM, deep sleep? Just tell us about that.
Correct, yeah. So essentially there's 4 stages to sleep. So there's stage 1 and stage 2, which are your lighter stages of sleep. And then stage 3 is your deeper sleep. And then you've got the stage 4, which is your REM. Which is a rapid eye movement stage. And it's the stage 3 and the REM sleep which is really, really important for restorative and regenerative sleep.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tonight as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tonight. Only on GB News. People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:49. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, ahead of the Chancellor's much-anticipated budget on October the 30th, GB News' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire has been speaking to business leaders and pub-goers about some of the challenges the alcohol sector is facing.
Cut alcohol duty and back Scotch whisky. That's the message from Scottish business leaders ahead of the October budget. Rachel Reeves is being urged to lower the duty in spirits after Jeremy Hunt increased it by 10.1% last August, the biggest rise of its kind in 40 years, topping up the tax burden on a bottle of Scotch to over 70%. HMRC says the move denied the public purse nearly £300 million in its first year. Despite the tax jump, pub owner Mike Henderson says minimum unit pricing has put blended whisky back on the menu.
A bottle that did cost £13, £14 is now nearly £20. So people are willing to come into a pub. You can get a malt, £5, £5 in it for a malt, and £2.60 for a blend.
It's worth saying that this isn't just any old pub. Camera, the campaign for Real Ale, has crowned the Hill End Tavern as Scotland's best pub 2 years running. The biggest change felt here is from Jeremy Hunt's draft relief, also introduced last August, making pub pints that little bit cheaper. With the pub quiz about to swing into action, do these punters A, stick with Real Ale at a knockdown price, or B, stump up extra for that pricey chaser?
It's a cheeky chaser, maybe on occasion. Mostly it's just the ales. It's a good pint, it's a good session pint, and it's a great price, so I'm happy with the ales.
Most of the time we drink beer, actually, but if we win, we might go into a wee whisky as a celebratory drink.
Not changed my habits at all. Just we order what we want, basically, whether it's whisky or ale. So.
The Scotch Whisky Association has appealed to Rachel Reeves to reverse the economic damage done by her predecessor. But with UK alcohol deaths on the rise and at a 15-year high here in Scotland, it shouldn't be surprising if yet another cash-strapped Chancellor sees the drinks industry as easy pickings. Tony Maguire, GB News.
And a breaking news story now. The Israeli military says it is checking the possibility it has killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Meanwhile, the Israeli cabinet has been told that it is very likely that he is dead. Sinwar is believed to be the mastermind of the October the 7th Hamas terrorist attack upon Israel. And I'm rejoined again by GB News reporter Adam Cherry on hand to fill us in on this breaking story. Now, it's hard to overestimate the importance. This is a talismanic takedown of what many people are calling the head of the snake of Hamas. Tell us more.
Yeah, right. So we actually in the last few minutes have had a statement from John Healey, who's the UK Defence Secretary, speaking at a NATO Defence Ministers meeting in Brussels. And he says, I'll just read you the full quote. I believe we're still waiting for the confirmation from the IDF, as we said, waiting for DNA. I, for one, will not mourn the death of a terror leader like Sinwar. someone who was responsible for the terror attack on October the 7th. And I'm conscious, like the UK government is, that the triggered is not just the deadliest but this triggered not just the deadliest, darkest day for the Jewish people since the Second World War. Has triggered since more than a year of conflict an intolerable level of civilian Palestinian casualties as well. So that's just come in the last few minutes from the UK Defence Secretary, John Healey.
And just to make viewers aware, it's believed to be there is some photograph evidence knocking about. We've seen they're now relying on DNA evidence to absolutely confirm that this body is Yahya Sinwar. If that is the case, as I said, this is basically the Israeli bin Laden, the number one operative behind that terror attack, the man that the IDF, that Benjamin Netanyahu, above all others, wanted to be eviscerated. And Adam Cherry, interesting, isn't it, how Western leaders have been queuing up to tell Israel to down tools, down arms. Yeah. Politics is the only way out of this. A two-state solution is the only way out of this. Benjamin Netanyahu, he didn't listen. He's a man on a mission. And it seems now the number one target, public enemy number one of the state of Israel, seems to have been eviscerated.
Yeah. Well, as soon as they got Hanea, who was the political leader, they assassinated him. This guy has been all they've been focusing on. So, as you said, this is a really talismanic step and huge in terms of the overall shape of the war. But also the fact, it's an interesting point, isn't it, that if Israel had listened to the Western calls on this, perhaps this may not have happened. It's only through going rogue, if you like, or basically ignoring those calls that they've managed to do this, I would argue.
Thank you. It seems few will mourn Yahya Sinwar. Thank you once again, Adam Cherry. Now, plenty more coming up in your next hour, including all the latest in the build-up to the GB News Conservative Leadership event, 7 p.m. tonight. Badenoch versus Jenrick. That's all coming up on GB News. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. Now, your weather is Aidan McGibbon.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to another update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine for most of us during the rest of the day, with many showers clearing away, but under clear skies and with light winds as the isobars open out, we will see widespread mist and fog forming by dawn. Now, this little occluded front here is providing a focus for thicker cloud in the north and west, and a few showers continuing into the evening and the first part of the night, especially for central and northern Scotland, 1 or 2 for Wales and the southwest. Away from any showers, however, clear spells, and with light winds, temperatures will fall into the mid to high single figures. And with a relatively soggy ground still, that's going to lead to widespread mist and fog forming by dawn. Largely hill fog for parts of Scotland and northern England, but across the Midlands, southern and eastern England, as well as Wales, we'll see low-level fog. Could cause transport issues in the morning. Watch out if you're driving during the early part of the day. But for Northern Ireland, the wind's already picking up. Outbreaks of rain and cloud moving in here. Likewise for western Scotland. And those winds are going to be a key concern through Friday for northwest Scotland, with 50 to 60 mile-per-hour wind gusts strengthening during the morning and into the afternoon, and accompanied by heavy rain. That's all also associated with high tides, so could be some coastal flooding for the west and northwest of Scotland. Meanwhile, after any mist and fog's cleared across central and eastern parts of England, a sunny day is expected, 17 Celsius. But for Wales, western England and for the rest of Scotland and Northern Ireland, we're going to see outbreaks of rain steadily progressing west to east during the afternoon and into the evening. Then into the weekend, a fine start to Saturday for many, but it turns increasingly windy with some potentially disruptive winds on Sunday.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Issues in Staffordshire. If you're heading north up the M6, currently closed from 15 at Stoke up to the Kiel services. There's queues all the way back towards the Stafford services at the scene of a collision. Southbound A500 towards junction 15, also struggling too. Northbound M1, all the traffic on stop around Nottingham. Junction 24 up to 25, there's a breakdown causing queues. A lane shut either side of the M5 as well, so slow going between the M50 at junction 8 and Worcester and Evesham at junction 7. All the traffic on stop too for the northbound M1, Daventry 16 up to Coventry 17. In the roadworks, there's been a collision, so big queues and very slow anti-clock for the M25 towards Wisley at 10. It follows an earlier issue. Indeed, it's slow clockwise and anti-clockwise. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's only good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. Of course, we're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, the Israeli military says it is checking the possibility it has killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. He is believed to be the mastermind of the October the 7th terror attacks by Hamas on Israel. And we bring you all of the latest updates on this breaking story throughout the show. Now, in round about 3 hours' time, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch will battle it out on GB News' exclusive event, Decision Time, the Race to Lead. Who will be crowned the Tory leader in a scrap that some are calling the last chance to save the Tories? And tributes are pouring in following the tragic death of One Direction star Liam Payne, who has died aged just 31. We'll speak to the journalist who knew him best, plus his close friend, the former SAS man, Ant Middleton, will be joining me later on the show. And that's all coming up in your next hour. Well, to lead or not to lead, that is the question. Kemi Badenoch goes head-to-head with Robert Jenrick in 3 hours' time, exclusively live here on GB News. 5:15, Chris Hope will come into the studio and join me to toss the coin to dramatically decide who gets to go first, who gets the honour of facing the music first. Who would you back? Who do you want to lead the Conservatives into the next general election? A poll says today that Robert Jenrick is edging ahead. Is that the person for the job in your eyes, or is Kemi Badenoch the outspoken rough diamond, the type of character that you think the Tories need to ruffle a few feathers and get things done? I'll be joined shortly by Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's backing Robert Jenrick. He'll tell me why, and he's also been tipped to be the party chairman if that were to be the case. And we all know Jacob has talked about doing a deal potentially with a certain Mr. Nigel Farage. So don't go anywhere. Stick around for that. Get in touch. Who get your votes? gbnews.com/your say. But first is your headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 4 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. Members of Israel's security cabinet have been informed that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar is very likely dead after an operation in Gaza targeting 3 militants. Meanwhile, Israeli TV stations are also reporting his death. In a statement, the IDF said that the identities of those killed has yet to be confirmed and say there are no indications that Israeli hostages were present at the site of the attack. If confirmed, the 62-year-old's death would mark a significant victory for Israel amid a series of high-profile assassinations of enemy leaders in recent months. Believed to be the architect of the October 7th attack on Israel that ignited the current conflict, Sinwar has long been a top target for Israeli forces. Hamas has not yet commented on the reports. And back in the UK, a Tory councillor's wife has been jailed for 2.5 years after stirring up racial hatred against asylum seekers on the day of the Southport attacks. Lucy Connolly, married to Conservative councillor Raymond Connolly, posted a violent message on X calling for mass deportation and arson against hotels housing immigrants. She wrote the post on the day 3 young girls were killed in a knife attack in Southport. The post was deleted after 2 hours and she later apologised, but Connolly was today sentenced to 31 months imprisonment at Birmingham Crown Court. The family of former One Direction star Liam Payne has expressed their heartbreak following his death at the age of 31. In a statement released through a spokeswoman, his family remembered Liam as kind, funny and a brave soul. Fans have gathered outside the hotel in Buenos Aires, where he died, lighting candles and leaving flowers in an impromptu vigil to pay tribute to the music icon. Liam rose to fame as part of One Direction, one of the biggest pop groups in the world, before their indefinite hiatus in 2016. In other news, thousands of UK troops are being put on standby to deploy to Estonia's border with Russia, part of a crucial new agreement signed by Defence Secretary John Healey. It means the Army's 4th Brigade will remain on high readiness to defend against rising tensions from the ongoing war in Ukraine. Currently, about 1,000 British soldiers are in Estonia, and if called upon, the 4th Brigade could arrive within 10 days, equipped with advanced tanks and missile systems. As NATO ministers gather in Brussels, the Defence Secretary said the new deal will enhance the group's defences in the face of escalating global threats.
UK's unshakable commitment to NATO could never be more important. And at a time of growing Russian aggression and increasing wider threats, today we will make the commitment to reinforce NATO's eastern flank with a new plan alongside Estonia for our forces there. And we will make a commitment, a UK commitment, to bolstering the future of Europe's defences.
Now, a second body has been discovered following a large explosion in Newcastle, where a 7-year-old boy tragically lost his life. The body, believed to be a man in his 30s, was located in the debris by emergency crews. Drone footage shows the wreckage, with roofs collapsed and debris strewn across the street. Northumbria police confirm that 6 others have been hospitalised, with one man in a critical but stable condition. The investigation into the cause of the explosion is ongoing, with police urging the public to refrain from speculation. Thousands of migrants could be granted asylum in the UK as the government pushes to clear a huge backlog of applications. The Refugee Council estimates the number of pending asylum claims could reach almost 120,000 by January, following Labour's decision to scrap the Rwanda plan. New analysis suggests that processing the backlog could see over 62,000 more people recognised as refugees in the UK. It comes as Downing Street says it's committed to ending the use of asylum hotels. Despite reports, the Home Office may reopen some that were previously closed. And Kemi Badenoch says her bid for Conservative leadership is a grassroots campaign taking aim at her rival Robert Jenrick's more media-focused approach. As the two contenders compete to replace Rishi Sunak, the Shadow Housing Secretary says the Tories need to regain voters lost to Reform and the Liberal Democrats. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick's outlined his vision for a smaller state and lower taxes, arguing that returning the spend on benefits to pre-pandemic levels could help a tax cut. From 7 p.m. tonight, they'll make their pitches to Tory members in a special programme moderated by our political editor, Christopher Hope. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. The Israeli military says it is checking the possibility that it has killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Sinwar is believed to be the mastermind of the 7th of October terror invasion by Hamas into Israel. And we can now speak with GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White, for the very latest. Mark, a massive moment if this is verified. You were saying earlier the significance of this is huge. Yahya Sinwar, the Israeli bin Laden. What's the latest?
Yeah, it's difficult to overstate, really, just how significant this would be if it is indeed confirmed to be Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas in Gaza, who has been killed. The very latest line we're getting out of Israel is that the Israeli War Cabinet have now been told that it is very likely that Yahya Sinwar is dead. They will not be 100% sure of that until they carry out DNA tests, which they are currently in the process of doing. Now, we have an image that we want to show you. I should warn you, it is an image of Israeli Defense Force soldiers surrounding the body of the man believed to be Yahya Sinwar. We have blurred that body, but just a warning anyway. We can show you that image now. This is in a building that was struck by the Israeli military, and according to the Israeli military, 3 terrorists inside that building were eliminated, including the man they believe to be Yahya Sinwar. Now, why are we talking about this man? Well, he is the mastermind behind that horrific attack on the 7th of October last year, in which 1,200 people were murdered, more than 200 taken hostage. 100 of those hostages are still unaccounted for now. He is such a significant figure in terms of the Israeli population. For them, he is their equivalent to Osama bin Laden. So if this is confirmed, it is just the most enormous development and will bring with it some hope that perhaps after more than a year, there can be some kind of conclusion to that conflict in Gaza, because a lot of senior commanders in Hamas have been taken out of the picture over the past year. Now with the very top, the head figure in Hamas being eliminated, the Israelis believe, then perhaps the way is open for some kind of a settlement. The Israelis, Martin, have had some very significant successes in recent weeks with the killing of the political leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, in Tehran, and also the killing of Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, that other terrorist group to the north in the south of Lebanon, along with some very significant leaders from Hezbollah as well. But this, without a doubt, was the one scalp that the Israeli population, the government, the military were after. And tonight, this afternoon, it looks as though they have got their man.
And Mark White, there's almost a grim irony in the fact if Benjamin Netanyahu had listened to David Lammy, to Sir Keir Starmer, to Joe Biden, to Kamala Harris, to Emmanuel Macron, and down their weapons, then this guy, Yahya Sinwar, he'd still be alive. Benjamin Netanyahu had his own idea. Looks like mission accomplished, taking down the architect of October the 7th. Mark White, thank you very much for that update. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Now, just a few hours' time now, the Conservative leadership contenders Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch will be live on GB News in the first televised leadership event, as you can see on your screens, where they will face tough questions from our political editor Christopher Hope and also Conservative Party members, and most importantly, perhaps you, the viewer at home, on why they should be made the new leader and why they will be best to take on Prime Minister Keir Starmer as leader of the opposition. And to discuss this now, I'm joined in the studio by the former Conservative MP, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Sir Jacob, welcome to the show. Now, of course, your team, Jenrick, you've been very open about that as the two go head-to-head tonight. Tell us why you think your man is the best person for the job.
I'm supporting Robert because he's absolutely clear on immigration, which is one of the biggest issues facing the country, one of the greatest concern of voters. And he's recognised that the only way to do it is to take back control of our laws by leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. So not only does he will the end, but he wills the means, and he had the courage to resign from government, from Rishi Sunak's administration, on principle because he thought the Rwanda policy wasn't being implemented properly. So he's somebody who's behaved honourably, he's got a clear policy, and he's willing to do something that restores our constitution so that elected politicians can make decisions rather than bureaucrats. It's essentially the completion of Brexit.
And electoral calculus poll out today, 6,300 people saying that Mr Jenrick is the more likely to cause damage to Sir Keir Starmer, but can't beat him outright, would stop an overall Labour majority, but then that would be in the realms again of the ghastly hung parliament and perhaps a Labour Liberal Democrat coalition. With that in mind, is either of them equipped to beat Sir Keir Starmer, or really is the writing on the wall for the Conservative Party?
Well, I think it's really fair to say, as Kemi hasn't got a spokesman here, that she's got many abilities as well. She is a very charismatic, capable person who has made the woke issue her own. So I am strongly supporting Robert, but Kemi is a very capable individual and would certainly take the fight to Keir Starmer. But when you come to the issue of can either of them reunite the right, that is going to be the big challenge. I'm fully supportive of first-past-the-post system. It's the best, most democratic way of choosing a government. But to do that, you have to present your coalition to the people before the election rather than after the election. What do I mean by that? Well, before the election, you present a party that is somehow or another working together, that has some sympathy, or you win reform over by showing that what the Conservatives are doing represents what they believe in. So I'd quote David Cameron for once, which may horrify you. What we need to do to reform is what David Cameron did to Lib Dems. We need to love bomb them, to recognise they've got valid concerns, that they are true patriots, they are at their heart Conservatives, to win them and indeed their leaders back.
What does that love bombing look like? It sounds great, it conjures up great imagery, but this polling here, it's only a poll, it's a long way out, but it still has Reform putting on at least 20 seats. Either candidate would suffer the same fate, and that's a long way out. So, you've spoken before about some kind of non-aggression pact, for example, in those 98 seats, I believe, where Reform came second to the Labour Party. If we are going to the realms of Mr Jenrick potentially taking a bigger chunk out of Sir Keir Starmer's Labour difference, and therefore opening up the coalition pact between Reform and the Conservatives, is that something you might entertain?
No. Robert has asked me to be chairman of the party if he wins. So I'm speaking now as a GB News presenter, thinking about how you would do things rather than trying to make commitments for Robert or what would happen if I were party chairman. But I think you do need to reunite the right. You need to look at how Labour and the Lib Dems have pretended to be fighting every seat and in reality haven't. That at the last election they clearly had an informal pact where they decided where they would work and where they wouldn't. You need to look at that. You need to look at 1918 and the coupon election to decide whether there is a way of doing it where you give support to people who share the same views. But the fundamental point is it's the percentage of the vote going to Reform that matters, not the number of seats. Because the seats we lost in the South East to the Lib Dems weren't lost because the Lib Dems won lots of votes. They were won because lots of people who previously voted Conservative voted Reform or stayed at home, and those are the ones we need to win back.
But could there be a situation, if the chips fell in the right way, where to get over the line, the Conservatives needed to do a coalition with Nigel Farage's Reform Party? That's something you'd be entertaining to do?
Well, we supped with the devil and didn't use a sufficiently long spoon when we went into the office with the Lib Dems. Going to office with Nigel would be a much preferable option to doing it with the Lib Dems, surely, for any Conservative.
There we have it. Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much, Jacob Rees-Mogg. And, of course, that debate is tonight on the show around about 7 p.m. Bang on. So we've got about 2 3/4 of an hour to go. 7 p.m. tonight on GB News. There it is, decision time, the race to lead. Thanks for joining us, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Now, moving on now. Liam Payne's family has released a statement saying they are heartbroken at their loss. And they have said Liam will forever live in our hearts and will remember him for his kind, funny and brave soul. Payne's death was confirmed by emergency responders yesterday after he fell from his hotel balcony in Buenos Aires in Argentina. As tributes pour in for the former One Direction singer, he's been remembered for his kindness and his compassion. Well, GB News has been to Wolverhampton today to speak to some of Liam's hometown fans about his tragic passing and the legacy he leaves behind.
What's your reaction then to Liam Payne passing away?
Oh, it's very sad. Very sad.
I think it's really upsetting because, like, he was a great person and I love the music, like the whole band made and everything. It was great. I grew up on the music.
It was really sad. It's such a young life, isn't it, taken away from him. Yeah, very sad.
I think when they're young and they go into the business, I think they should have more support than what they have.
Yeah.
It's inspired me to, pursue my dreams and what I'm doing.
We can now speak with 2010 X Factor finalist Mary Byrne. Mary, welcome to the show. Sad that we have to speak on this day. And of course, you appeared on the show the same year as One Direction. Tell us about your memories of those days first.
Well, to be honest with you, when I met the guys, they were all only kids. And in my eyes, they were like my grandchildren. And Liam in particular. But Liam always had this big, he had an old head on his shoulders. And he was always the one that helped everybody else along, including me at the age of 50. He was the guy who gave me the courage to go on when I felt low. And I only remember him as kind, gentle, and full of fun and full of life, and always there for everyone else.
Mary, you came third that year. You came fifth, beg your pardon, and One Direction came third. And look, they went on to be very, very big. And later on, though, of course, fame was kinder to some of the band than to all of them. And Liam struggled, didn't he, with some of that. We know he struggled with some addictions. And how did you hear of the news and how did it hit you?
Well, I'm over in Spain at the moment doing some shows, and I was at dinner last night when the news hit. And I mean, it took me, it took the breath out of me, and I just burst into tears because the boy I remember was strong and kind and knew where he was going, and very fond of, very close to his family, and always kept saying to me, if I make some money on this, not thinking he was going to go as big as he did, or they did. He was saying, me and my dad will go into business together. We'll do this, we'll do that. And he literally seemed to have it all in his head and ready to go for. So to see him go down that dark road, after fame, kind of the big worldwide band they became, is very sad. It is very sad because he did have a lot. They all had a lot to give to the world. And I think the breakup may have caused him a little bit of stress and brought on some mental problems because he never seemed to be right after that.
Yeah, we're going to speak later in the show to Ant Middleton, of course, the former SAS operative who became a great friend of Liam's. And he said, yeah, there was that sense, he lacked that sense of purpose, that sense of belonging. When you're so close to the lads in a band like that after they split up, and he kind of struggled to find a direction. And it's just such a sad, sad loss, isn't it? When somebody he was beautiful. He was talented, generous. I can see you getting emotional now, just thinking back. And you'll always remember him, though, as that sweet boy that you met back in 2010.
I will, because I remember one particular time while I was in the house, feeling very low, missing my daughter. I mean, I was 50 going on the show, and these were all young people around me. And he was the one who came to me and put his arms around me and said, look, I'm here for you. I know you're missing Deborah, but you need to push on with it. And we're all going to be together. And that type of love and care that young man could give you was an incredible gift. And I will miss him. I will miss the fact that he could have been such a big, big star. He just had a little drop in his life and in his career. And, and now his little boy left behind. It's very sad. And he was such a lovely, lovely person. And I will miss him. And I did love him.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us, Mary. Thank you very much to speak in these sad circumstances, and thank you for sharing those memories. Thank you. Take care. Cheers. Now, coming up, we'll be discussing the new change of tactics from people smugglers as they increasingly turn to vehicles. They're going back to basics as a result of the small boats crackdown. They're going back to the backs of lorries. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 incredible young people from Essex are planning to become the youngest people ever to row, not sail, row, across the Atlantic Ocean.
It's about for 3,000 miles.
It is.
Give or take.
Almost exactly that, Sam.
The 3 flying fish, so-called, consists of Anna, Dunk, Harry, Alan and Rowan Daly, who are preparing to row that 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. It would be the second largest ocean in the world, and the trio are aiming to do that challenge in support of the Teenage Cancer Trust.
Well, I'm very pleased to say that Anna and Harry from the Flying Fish join us now. Very good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
I think the two of you are bonkers, but brilliant. Absolutely incredible what you're doing to raise money for Teenage Cancer Trust. Why did you want to do this?
So our third person, Rowan, his friend actually died. So when he was in secondary school, I believe, one of his peers passed away, and Teenage Cancer Trust supported them and their family a lot. So it was definitely the right charity. Yeah, it was.
Absolutely awful. So you wanted to do something to raise money for teenage cancer. Why rowing?
So my dad did it in 2021.
The trip, the Atlantic trip?
Yeah, he rowed it as a pair. Where we live in Essex, they actually build the boats there. So we used to cycle round there past the boatyard, and he got interested and actually did it. He was the first year after COVID. And one night, we all met in the Air Cadets, so one night after Air Cadets, Rowan actually dropped me off home and the boat was outside. We were obviously waiting to get it sold. And I think he was asking some questions, and we stood there at my porch and went, Rowan said, I reckon we could do that. And I was like, yeah, I reckon we could. And then we brought Harry on board, and that's kind of how it all came together.
If people are watching and they want to support you, do you have a
Yeah, we've
GoFundMe
got social
page
media platforms at
Right.
The Free Flying Fish. That's Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, and our GoFundMe links in all of the bios on there.
Fantastic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tonight as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tonight. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tonight as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tonight. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:26. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, yet more bad news in Britain's failing ability to stop illegal arrivals as people smugglers are turning to alternative routes into the UK to avoid the small boats crackdown. What crackdown? Asylum seekers are paying gangs to hide them in vehicles. They're going back to basics, with only 3 in 10 asylum claims now being made by small boat arrivals, as compared with 4 in 10 just a year ago. Now, this comes, of course, as the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is planning on waving through over 60,000 applications to ease the so-called asylum backlog. And that's been predicted in new figures today from the Refugee Council. Well, it's more lunacy in the asylum system, and I can now speak with the Executive Director of Migration Watch, Dr. Mike Jones. Mike, always an absolute pleasure. Here we go again. Let's start with the first wave of figures, can we? 62,000 set to be waved through of the backlog, which currently sits at almost 119,000. Clearing the backlog, Mike, just means waving more people into Britain. They're almost certain, even if they get their first application rejected, to go into appeal. And we only ever manage to kick out about 4 or 5%. It's just yet more open borders madness, isn't it?
Well, essentially, it's a de facto amnesty. And that's how Labour is going to deal with the situation. The fact is they're not going to amend the Human Rights Act. They're not going to leave the ECHR. They could, of course, speed up deportations to safe countries. But at the end of the day, you know, they've got to give these people, you know, a fair hearing, and they're probably going to fast track their applications through and give them amnesty. But even those people that have their applications rejected, you know, how are you going to deport them? I mean, I'm sure a small trickle will be sent back to their countries of origin, but at the end of the day, you know, it's a de facto amnesty.
And Mike, the refugee camps are saying, oh, don't worry, it's only 3 out of 10 coming to Britain now via small boats. But the fact of the matter is the numbers are at an all-time high. So it's now 27,509 crossings in 2024 compared with just over 26,000 this time last year. So the overall number is going up, even if the percentage of small boats is going down. But that takes us to the next stage. They're going back to basics, going back to stowing away in trucks, in lorries, in vehicles coming over the channel or under the channel. That way, with all eyes on Calais, they're now simply going back to the ports.
Yeah, I mean, the number one question you have to ask yourself with regards to illegal migration policy is, can you deport people? Can you detain and deport them quite quickly? If you can't, then you're stirring up enormous problems for your country. So, you know, people can overstay visas. They can be on short-term or long-term visas and not go back. They can, you know, come through clandestine means, through the back of a lorry, as you pointed out, or they could come across the English Channel. But the fact is, if you can't deport them, then the pull factor remains. More and more people will come. And, you know, yes, you can fast track these people through the system and give them asylum, which is not what the British people want. But even those people who have their asylum applications rejected will probably still stay here because you can't get rid of them. So ultimately, the problem boils down to the legal system. If you can't change the legal system, then the whole administration completely collapses, and the political class are just going to be scrambling around the edges, giving, you know, sort of minor gestures and policies to sort of conceal the greater systemic problems here.
Yeah, another day in the madhouse and another day where the lunatics have taken over the asylum system. Thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure. Executive Director of Migration Watch, and that's Dr. Mike Jones. Thank you very much. There's lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including the Israeli military says it is checking the possibility that it has eliminated the Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. He's believed to be the mastermind of the 7th of October terrorist attacks by Hamas on Israel. And we'll have all of the latest on this developing story. But first, here's your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. It's 4:31. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. As you've been hearing, members of Israel's security cabinet have been informed that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar is very likely dead after an operation in Gaza targeting 3 militants. Meanwhile, Israeli TV stations are also reporting his death. In a statement, the IDF said that the identities of those killed have yet to be confirmed and say there were no indications that Israeli hostages were present at the site of the attack. If confirmed, the 62-year-old's death would mark a significant victory for Israel amid a series of high-profile assassinations of enemy leaders in recent months. Believed to be the architect of the October 7th attack on Israel that ignited the current conflict, Sinwar has long been a top target for Israeli forces. Hamas has not yet commented on the reports. Back in the UK, a Tory councillor's wife has been jailed for 2.5 years after stirring up racial hatred against asylum seekers on the day of the Southport attacks. Lucy Connolly, married to Conservative councillor Raymond Connolly, posted a violent message on X calling for mass deportation and arson against hotels housing migrants. She wrote the post on the day 3 young girls were killed in a knife attack in Southport. The post was deleted after 2 hours and she later apologised, but Connolly was sentenced to 31 months imprisonment at Birmingham Crown Court today. The family of former One Direction star Liam Payne has expressed their heartbreak following their death at the age of 31. In a statement released through a spokeswoman, his family remembered Liam as kind, funny and a brave soul. Fans have gathered outside the hotel in Buenos Aires where he died, lighting candles and leaving flowers in an impromptu visual to pay tribute to the music icon. Liam rose to fame as part of One Direction, one of the biggest pop groups in the world, before their indefinite hiatus in 2016. In other news, thousands of migrants could be granted asylum in the UK as the government pushes to clear a huge backlog of applications. The Refugee Council estimates the number of pending asylum claims could reach almost 120,000 by January, following Labour's decision to scrap the Rwanda plan. The new analysis suggests that processing the backlog could see over 62,000 more people recognised as refugees in the UK. It comes as Downing Street says it's committed to ending the use of asylum hotels, despite reports the Home Office may reopen some that were previously closed. And King Charles and Queen Camilla are heading to Australia for a shortened tour following His Majesty's cancer diagnosis earlier this year. Doctors advised curtailing the trip, cutting out a visit to New Zealand and adjusting other parts of the schedule. The King is also pausing his cancer treatment during the 11-day overseas visit. While down under, their schedule includes a review of the Royal Australian Navy in Sydney and meetings with top cancer experts before continuing on to Samoa. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2997 and €1,200. The price of gold is £2,071 and 46 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,388 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, if you want to get in touch, simply go to gbnews.com/your say and let me know, who do you think should win the leadership of the Conservative Party? That's around about 2.5 hours' time now, happening here on GB News, the head-to-head between Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick. Who gets your vote? Let me know. I'll read out the best of your messages a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Business News Channel.
Hi there, welcome to another update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine for most of us during the rest of the day, with many showers clearing away, but under clear skies and with light winds as the isobars open out, we will see widespread mist and fog forming by dawn. Now, this little occluded front here is providing a focus for thicker cloud in the north and west, and a few showers continuing into the evening and the first part of the night, especially for central and northern Scotland, 1 or 2 for Wales and the southwest. Away from any showers, however, clear spells, and with light winds, temperatures will fall into the mid to high single figures. And with a relatively soggy ground still, that's going to lead to widespread mist and fog forming by dawn. Largely hill fog for parts of Scotland and northern England, but across the Midlands, southern and eastern England, as well as Wales, We'll see low-level fog. Could cause transport issues in the morning. Watch out if you're driving during the early part of the day. But for Northern Ireland, the wind's already picking up. Outbreaks of rain and cloud moving in here. Likewise for Western Scotland. And those winds are going to be a key concern through Friday for northwest Scotland, with 50 to 60 mile-per-hour wind gusts strengthening during the morning and into the afternoon, and accompanied by heavy rain. That's all also associated with high tides, so could be some coastal flooding for the west and northwest of Scotland. Meanwhile, after any mist and fog's cleared across central and eastern parts of England, a sunny day is expected, 17 Celsius. But for Wales, western England and for the rest of Scotland and Northern Ireland, we're going to see outbreaks of rain steadily progressing west to east during the afternoon and into the evening. Then into the weekend, a fine start to Saturday for many, but it turns increasingly windy with some potentially disruptive winds on Sunday.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. There's two closures on the northbound M6 at the moment. Firstly, in the West Midlands, it shuts at junction 9 for Wednesbury, a course diversion via the exit and the entry slip roads there. It's at the scene of a collision, causing queues back towards Spaghetti Junction at 6. On the northbound M5 back to West Brom at 1. And the northbound M6 also closed around Stoke, 15 to 16. Big queues back towards 14 at the scene of a collision there, causing queues southbound too, but the closure's northbound. Northbound M1 Daventry to Coventry in the roadworks, 16 to 17, still very slow, not helped by an earlier collision there. And Worcestershire delays either side of the M5 between the M50 at 8 and Worcester and Evesham at 7. A lane shut both ways, and obstruction there causing big delays at the moment. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:39. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, today is the fourth day of Sarah Sharif's murder trial, with more evidence being delivered to the jury. Yesterday, the courts heard how Sarah had suffered 70 injuries across her body in the days leading up to her death. And Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, her stepmother, Banish Batul, and her uncle, Faisal Malik, are all denying murdering the 10-year-old girl. And GB News' national reporter Charlie Peters is at the Old Bailey for us with the latest from this extremely disturbing trial. Charlie, the evidence is harrowing. It's been very concerning. Nevertheless, it must be heard. Tell us the latest.
Yes, Martin, and yesterday those 70 injuries you've mentioned, they were just new injuries. That's not including scarring and indeed internal injuries, some of which we heard about this morning, where the Old Bailey heard evidence from an osteoarticular pathologist. That is a professor who specialises in injuries to joints and bones and assesses their origin and also how old they may be. And he showed us a set of x-rays of Sarah Sharif's left hand, where he showed two fractures to her index finger and her little finger, but also a fracture to the capitate, which is a bone in the wrist, just below the connection with the hand. He said that a fracture to that area was extremely rare in isolation. He says that injury in children is often seen when people land with their hand outstretched. He said there was another potential reason for that injury, and that would be a direct blow to the wrist. He also pointed to some other injuries that we saw on X-ray. He pointed to Sarah Sharif's thighoid, which is a U-shaped bone not connected to any others in the neck. It's in the throat. It also had a fracture. And he said that in 25% of these cases, that is a issue where it has been caused by strangulation, direct manual strangulation, he said, in this case. Jurors heard that the injuries to the fingers, which was caused, he said, by lateral pulling, that is the fingers being pulled across or away from the vulcan, the base of the hand, they could be up to 12 to 18 days old. In that 6-day window, he was able to assess that by the age of the cartilage as they had healed. But for the thighoid injury to the neck, that bone in the neck. He said that Sarah Sharif's injury there was up to 3 months old, between 6 and 12 weeks. Now, he also said that there was another issue that Sarah Sharif was discovered during that post-mortem examination, and that was the gelatinous transformation of bone marrow, GBNews. He said it was a bluey tinge. It was unusual. He gave 3 reasons as to why that might happen to a 10-year-old girl. He pointed to disease and infection and starvation. He ruled out the first 2, and he said that there were signs in the final days of Sarah's life that there was a rapid reduction in the food that she was eating. Now, in the afternoon, the evidence then turned to a senior intelligence officer from Surrey Police, who started to take the jury through some of the information about cell site data, the mobile phones of all 3 defendants. This is crucial because in the prosecution's opening argument, he said that the defendants would deny blame or shift it onto one another. And Mr. Emlyn Jones, KC, said the prosecution said it was inconceivable that any of the adults who could have carried out the abuse did so without the complicity, participation, assistance and encouragement of the others. Well, we will hear further information about those cell site data, which the prosecution will hope to demonstrate shows who was present at the time of those injuries being inflicted on 10-year-old Sarah. All 3 deny murder.
Charlie Peters, there's just almost unimaginable horror there inflicted upon Sarah Sharif. Thank you for giving us that update, mate. Thank you, mate. Now, ahead of the Chancellor's budget on October the 30th, GBNews' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire has been speaking to business leaders and pubgoers about some of the challenges that the alcohol sector is facing.
Cut alcohol duty and back Scotch whisky. That's the message from Scottish business leaders ahead of the October budget. Rachel Reeves is being urged to lower the duty in spirits after Jeremy Hunt increased it by 10.1% last August, the biggest rise of its kind in 40 years, topping up the tax burden on a bottle of Scotch to over 70%. HMRC says the move denied the public purse nearly £300 million in its first year. Despite the tax jump, pub owner Mike Henderson says minimum unit pricing has put blended whisky back on the menu.
A bottle that did cost £13, £14 is now nearly £20. So people are willing to come into a pub. You can get a malt, £5 in it for a malt, and £2.60 for a blend.
It's worth saying that this isn't just any old pub. Camera, the campaign for Real Ale, has crowned the Hill End Tavern as Scotland's best pub 2 years running. The biggest change felt here is from Jeremy Hunt's draft relief, also introduced last August, making pub pints that little bit cheaper. With the pub quiz about to swing into action, do these punters A, stick with Real Ale at a knockdown price, or B, stump up extra for that pricey chaser?
It's a cheeky chaser, maybe on occasion. Mostly it's just the ales. It's a good pint, it's a good session pint, and it's a great price, so I'm happy with the ales.
Most of the time we drink beer, actually, but if we win, we might go into a wee whisky as a celebratory drink.
Not changed my habits at all. Just we order what we want, basically, whether it's whisky or ale. So.
The Scotch Whisky Association has appealed to Rachel Reeves to reverse the economic damage done by her predecessor. But with UK alcohol deaths on the rise and at a 15-year high here in Scotland, it shouldn't be surprising if yet another cash-strapped Chancellor sees the drinks industry as easy pickings. Tony Maguire, GB News.
Now, the Israeli military says it is checking the possibility that it's killed the Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. He's believed to be the mastermind of the 7th of October terror attacks by Hamas, and we'll be bringing you all the latest updates on this developing story in just a moment. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, Italian wine in Britain is worth a whopping £891 million and can be described as a Prosecco phenomenon, apparently. So joining us now to tell us more about why these Italian bubbles are so popular is Ed Smith, the founder of The Emissary, a British-based Prosecco brand. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, guys.
Thank you for coming in, and you've done just as we asked. You've come laden with booze and bottles and glasses.
Exactly.
So the definition of Prosecco, Tatiana, you were saying earlier, is sparkling wine that's been made in certain areas of Italy. Which areas?
Exactly. So the Prosecco region is northeast Italy. It's about sort of an hour north of Venice. Foothills of Dolomite Mountains. Very, very beautiful part of Italy. Veneto, exactly. Well done.
Show off.
Well, I'm half Italian, so...
well, there we go. OK, you should be teaching me.
No, that's it.
So, yeah, so like Champagne, that has to come from the Champagne region in France. Prosecco has to come from the Prosecco region in Italy. And it's different to Champagne and other sparkling wines, like English sparkling wine, in that geography, like we just mentioned, has to come from that region in Italy. The grapes that are used are different. So Prosecco has to be at least 85% Glera, which is the native grapes of the region. And it's most importantly the method. So Champagne and English sparkling wines use the traditional method, where second fermentation, which produces the bubbles, happens in the bottle. Whereas Prosecco uses what's called the Charmat method. So the second fermentation happens in still vats. It's a much quicker process, and that's why Prosecco is a bit more affordable.
So the Emissary is a British-based Prosecco brand.
Yeah.
So is it made in the UK?
No, made in Italy.
Yeah, that's why you can call it Prosecco.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can't call it Prosecco unless it's made in those two regions.
Great. So can we get stuck into some of these? That's the most important
Absolutely.
thing of this morning.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 5. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. The Israeli military says it is checking the possibility that it has eliminated Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. And meanwhile, the Israeli cabinet has been told that he is very likely to be dead. Sinwar was believed to be the mastermind of the 7th of October terrorist invasion of Israel by Hamas. And let's now speak with the Defence and Foreign Affairs editor at The Telegraph, Con Coughlin. Con, welcome to the show. A significant elimination if the evidence comes through, and the photographic evidence certainly looks compelling. I believe now we're at the stage of DNA identification. Tell us the significance of taking down Yahya Sinwar, believed to be the mastermind of the October the 7th invasion of Israel.
Well, good afternoon and good to be with you. This would be a very significant blow to the Hamas leadership. Sinwar is basically public enemy number one for the Israelis. And you may well have seen that there have been video posted of Israelis on the beach in Tel Aviv celebrating his demise. I think the Israelis still have to officially confirm his death, but it does look like they've got him. He was public enemy number one. As you said, he was the mastermind of the October 7 attacks. And so I think from Israel's perspective, if they have got him, it really will be a big nail in the coffin of Hamas. Let's not forget that when Israel launched its offensive in Gaza a year ago, Hamas had about 24 battalions of terrorists, and now they've got about 22. So, first of all, Hamas as a force has been degraded, and now if they've lost their top leader, this is a bitter blow.
And Con, tell us about the significance of Netanyahu simply persevering with his mission. He said at the beginning, I will not stop until Hamas are eliminated. And yet, We've had Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Sir Keir Starmer, David Lammy, Emmanuel Macron urging him for a more political, a more peaceful route. He didn't listen to them, and perhaps it's best he didn't, because by persevering this way, he has taken out, as you say, somebody of massive significance to the entire Hamas regime.
Well, that's correct. I think a lot of Western leaders have been very naive about this. I mean, first of all, Israel didn't start this war. Israel suffered, the worst terrorist attack in its history, and like any nation, it's responded. And let's not forget, Biden and co have been pressing for a ceasefire in Gaza, but Hamas has never really accepted the terms. Hamas has said it will have a ceasefire if the Israelis withdraw. Well, the Israelis aren't going to withdraw in the middle of a war. They're there to destroy Hamas. So, Sinwar was the man who kept saying no to a ceasefire, and it looks like he's paid the ultimate price. But I think this is a lesson for the West, because it's not just Hamas. Hamas is backed by Iran. Iran has a whole network of terrorist organizations in the Middle East, and they're not just targeting Israel, they're targeting us here in the UK. So, people need to wake up about the threats we face and deal with them properly.
And Con, we've got a quick minute before we have to end. Do you think there's a likelihood of there being a backlash, any terror activity on foreign soil, or with each of these leaders is taken down now, is the combined force of Hezbollah and Hamas just being severely eradicated and removed?
Well, I think the terrorist networks would love to respond, but as you indicated, I think they've been sorely diminished over the past year, both in Lebanon, in Gaza, around the Middle East. So their options are limited, but I mean, they will be looking for ways to get their revenge in. So we need to be.
I'm afraid we have to leave it there. We've simply run out of time, but thank you very much for joining us, Con Coughlin. Now, please don't go anywhere. Plenty more coming, including the build-up. We're just 2 hours away from that debate on GB News. I'm Martin Daubney, Britain's News Channel. Now it's time for your weather. Here's Aidan McGibbon.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to another update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine for most of us during the rest of the day, with many showers clearing away, but under clear skies and with light winds as the isobars open out, we will see widespread mist and fog forming by dawn. Now, this little occluded front here is providing a focus for thicker cloud in the north and west, and a few showers continuing into the evening and the first part of the night, especially for central and northern Scotland, 1 or 2 for Wales and the southwest. Away from any showers, however, clear spells, and with light winds, temperatures will fall into the mid to high single figures. And with a relatively soggy ground still, that's going to lead to widespread mist and fog forming by dawn. Largely hill fog for parts of Scotland and northern England, but across the Midlands, southern and eastern England, as well as Wales, we'll see low-level fog. Could cause transport issues in the morning. Watch out if you're driving during the early part of the day. But for Northern Ireland, the wind's already picking up. Outbreaks of rain and cloud moving in here. Likewise for western Scotland. And those winds are going to be a key concern through Friday for northwest Scotland, with 50 to 60 mile-per-hour wind gusts strengthening during the morning and into the afternoon, and accompanied by heavy rain. That's all also associated with high tides, so could be some coastal flooding for the west and northwest of Scotland. Meanwhile, after any mist and fog's cleared across central and eastern parts of England, a sunny day is expected, 17 Celsius. But for Wales, western England and for the rest of Scotland and Northern Ireland, we're going to see outbreaks of rain steadily progressing west to east during the afternoon and into the evening. Then into the weekend, a fine start to Saturday for many, but it turns increasingly windy with some potentially disruptive winds on Sunday.
Woo! A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello again to you. I'm Jules Buckley. Still some big queues for the northbound M6 in a couple of spots this afternoon. Now, firstly, around Stoke, junction 15 to 16, the earlier collision's clear to all lanes open, but there's a tailback towards junction 14, Stafford North. It's quite slow southbound too. Still a lane shut northbound at Wednesbury for junction 9. There's a queue back towards Spaghetti Junction at the scene of a previous collision. It's queuing southbound back on towards the M5. Northbound M1 around Nottingham at junction 24 in the roadway. It's still slow for the earlier breakdown, but again, all lanes back open. There's a big Q2 northbound for the M1 up to Coventry, 16 to 17 in the cones, not helped by an earlier bump there. And the M27 eastbound, the exit slip closed, coming off at Hedge End at 7, slow going for emergency repairs.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tonight as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tonight. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, the Israeli military says it is increasingly confident that it has eliminated Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. He's believed to be the mastermind of the 7th of October attacks, the terror attacks by Hamas on Israel. We'll bring you all the latest updates on this developing story. And in just 2 hours' time, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch will battle it out on GB News' exclusive event, Decision Time, the race to lead. Who will be crowned the Tory leader in a scrap that some are calling the last chance to save the Tories. And at 5:15 p.m. today, in a few minutes' time, Chris Hope will toss a coin on the show to see which candidate takes to the stage first. And tributes are pouring in following the tragic death of One Direction star Liam Payne, who has died aged just 31, and we'll speak to one of his good friends, former SAS man, Ant Middleton. And that's all coming up in your next hour. On the show, always a pleasure to have your company. So, 2 hours' time, this is it. Head to head, Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick, all to play for and perhaps all to lose. Who do you think should be the next Conservative Party leader? And the momentum seems to be with Mr. Jenrick, but Kemi Badenoch still massively favoured for her courage and her fighting spirit by many. Is she the fresh breath of air the party needs? Is Mr. Jenrick, who's been making all the right noises, sounding very much actually like a Nigel Farage tribute act. Is he the one? A poll out today puts Mr. Jenrick slightly in front, and I'll be joined by the man who did that poll from Electoral Calculus shortly in the studio to go over the odds and the bets for tonight's big showdown. 2 hours away now. Get in touch. Who do you want to win? gbnews.com/your say. But now it's your headlines, and here's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 5 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. Members of Israel's Security Cabinet have been informed that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar is very likely dead after an operation in Gaza targeting 3 militants. Meanwhile, Israeli TV stations are also reporting his death, and officials say the Pentagon has been informed about the leader's potential death. In a statement, the IDF said that the identities of those killed have yet to be confirmed and say there were no indications that Israeli hostages were present at the site of the attack. If confirmed, the 62-year-old's death would mark a significant victory for Israel amid a series of high-profile assassinations of enemy leaders in recent months. Believed to be the architect of the October 7th attack on Israel that ignited the current conflict, Sinwar has long been a top target for Israeli forces. Hamas has yet to comment on the reports. The family of former One Direction star Liam Payne has expressed their heartbreak following his death at the age of 31. In a statement released through a spokeswoman, his family remembered Liam as a kind, funny and brave soul. Fans have gathered outside the hotel in Buenos Aires, where he died, lighting candles and leaving flowers in an impromptu vigil to pay tribute to the music icon. Meanwhile, Reuters is reporting that Buenos Aires police say they found Liam's hotel room in complete disarray with packs of clonazepam, a central nervous system depressant, as well as various other over-the-counter drugs and broken items. Liam rose to fame as part of One Direction, one of the biggest pop groups in the world, before their indefinite hiatus in 2016. In other news, thousands of UK troops are being put on standby to deploy to Estonia's border with Russia, part of a crucial new agreement signed by Defence Secretary John Healey. It means the Army's 4th Brigade will remain on high readiness to defend against rising tensions from the ongoing war in Ukraine. Currently, about 1,000 British soldiers are in Estonia, and if called upon, the 4th Brigade could arrive within 10 days, equipped with advanced tanks and missile systems. As NATO ministers gather in Brussels, the Defence Secretary said the new deal will enhance the group's defences in the face of escalating global threats.
The UK's unshakable commitment to NATO could never be more important. And at a time of growing Russian aggression and increasing wider threats, today we will make the commitment to reinforce NATO's eastern flank with a new plan alongside Estonia for our forces there. And we will make a commitment, a UK commitment, to bolstering the future of Europe's defences.
Now, a Tory councillor's wife has been jailed for 2.5 years after stirring up racial hatred against asylum seekers on the day of the Southport attacks. Lucy Connolly, married to Conservative councillor Raymond Connolly, posted a violent message on X calling for mass deportation and arson against hotels housing immigrants. She wrote the post on the day 3 young girls were killed in a knife attack in Southport. The post was deleted after 2 hours and she later apologised, but Connolly was today sentenced to 31 months imprisonment at Birmingham Crown Court. A second body has been discovered following a large explosion in Newcastle, where a 7-year-old boy tragically lost his life. The body, believed to be a man in his 30s, was located in the debris by emergency crews. Drone footage shows the wreckage with roofs collapsed and debris strewn across the street. Northumbria police confirmed that 6 others have been hospitalised, with 1 man in a critical but stable condition. The investigation into the cause of the explosion is ongoing, with police urging the public to refrain from speculation. Thousands of migrants could be granted asylum in the UK as the government pushes to clear a huge backlog of applications. The Refugee Council estimates the number of pending asylum claims could reach almost 120,000 by January, following Labour's decision to scrap the Rwanda plan. New analysis suggests that processing the backlog could see over 62,000 more people recognised as refugees in the UK. It comes as Downing Street says it's committed to ending the use of asylum hotels, despite reports the Home Office may reopen some that were previously closed. And Kemi Badenoch says her bid for Conservative leadership is a grassroots campaign, taking aim at her rival Robert Jenrick's more media-focused approach. As the 2 contenders compete to replace Rishi Sunak, the Shadow Housing Secretary says the Tories need to regain voters lost to Reform and the Liberal Democrats. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick's outlined his vision for a smaller state and lower taxes, arguing that returning the spend on benefits to pre-pandemic levels could help a tax cut. From 7 p.m. tonight, they'll make their pitches to Tory members in a special programme moderated by our political editor, Christopher Hope. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. The Israeli military says it is increasingly confident that it has eliminated Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, who is believed to be the mastermind of the October 7th terrorist attacks by Hamas on Israel. We can now speak with GB News' home and security editor, Mark White, for the very latest. Mark, a significant result if this is the case. When we last spoke, you said we were waiting for official confirmation. The photographic evidence seems compelling. What's the latest?
Well, the DNA tests, we're told, are now underway, but ahead of the results of those DNA tests, the Israeli War Cabinet has been told that they believe it's very likely that Yahya Sinwar has been killed in this Israeli strike that took place yesterday. And it is a very, very significant day, if confirmed, as far as the Israeli people are concerned. We've just had actually word from the UK Defence Secretary John Healey, who said if it's confirmed that Yahya Sinwar is among those who have died here, he for one will not mourn his death. This was, he says, a terror leader responsible for the attacks on the 7th of October last year, who not only was responsible for the darkest day for Jewish people since the Second World War, but also set in chain a conflict that has led to intolerable suffering for the Palestinian people. So that's the words of the Defence Secretary, John Healey. You're looking now at images from the aftermath of that airstrike yesterday, and just in and amongst the rubble there, the body of the man they believe to be Yahya Sinwar. We've blurred out those images, but he is surrounded by soldiers from the IDF, and now, as I say, samples taken away for that DNA analysis. But the word, of course, is out there now, a very significant figure. The main man in terms of the scalps that Israel was looking for in the aftermath of the 7th of October attacks, now killed, it seems. And this was the reaction in one northern Israeli town as the news filtered through. Well, you can't hear the horns, but they're sounding, music blaring as people are heading around the roundabout and the road systems in this northern Israeli town. And that is those images are being replicated right across Israel this evening as the news sinks in that the man responsible for such horrific carnage in Israel just over a year ago looks to have been killed by the Israeli Defence Forces. One of a number of very significant victories for the IDF in recent months, with, of course, the political leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, killed in the Iranian capital, Tehran. And then, of course, just last month, the leader of that other terrorist group to Israel's north, Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, killed along with many Hezbollah leaders as well, Martin.
And a bitter irony, Mark White, that if Benjamin Netanyahu had listened to Joe Biden, to Keir Starmer, to David Lammy, to Emmanuel Macron and stopped this war, then Yahya Sinwar may still be alive. Mark White, thank you very much for the latest on the elimination, it seems increasingly likely now, of the Hamas chief Yahya Sinwar. Now, in just a few hours' time, in fact, less than 3 hours' time now, the Conservative leadership contenders, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch, will be live on GB News in the first televised leadership event where they'll be facing tough questions from our political editor, Christopher Hope, Conservative Party members, and also you, the viewer at home, on why they should be made the new leader and why they would be the best to take on Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer as the leader of the opposition, perhaps even at the next general election. We're going to now speak with the former Conservative Minister and MP, Michelle Donnellan, who is backing Kemi Badenoch for leader. Welcome to the show, Michelle. Absolute delight to have your company. OK, so it's less than 2 hours now till the big showdown. Tell us why you think Kemi Badenoch is the best candidate for the job.
So I've backed Kemi from the very beginning of this race. I think that we do need somebody who's different, somebody who appreciates that the Conservative Party has to reorientate around our core principles and regain the trust of the electorate by doing so, and also somebody that's going to cut through. And we can tell that Kemi is that person. She is very different in her approach. That's what the country is crying out for, in my opinion. You know, they've seen politics of the same old for too long. They've seen broken promises. That was one of the reasons behind the fundamental landslide that Labour got. And by all accounts, they're not getting the change that they wanted. So we need somebody who's going to be refreshing and different. And I think that that formidable force is Kemi.
Now, Michelle, Michael Gove came out and said that voters have had enough of Tory boys. Bit ironic, considering he's almost the ultimate Tory boy, some might say, but putting that facetiousness to one side, are you believing of the mindset that the party needs a reset? You know, somebody who's different, somebody who's fresh, somebody who's got the gumption, the courage just to put the boot in, because politics just needs a bit of a shake by the neck, right? You think Kemi Badenoch is the best candidate for that?
I absolutely, definitely do. I don't think that's got anything to do with gender. I think I've got a lot of respect for Robert and Kemi, and I think either of them would be a fantastic leader. But for me, Kemi really has the edge and the ability to cut through, and focus groups have shown that she's also cutting through with those voters that went to Reform. She's cutting through with those voters that went to the Liberal Democrats. And these are key demographics that and key groups that we need to win back.
Michelle, perhaps a slight setback this morning. There's a poll out from Electoral Calculus. In fact, we'll have Martin Baxter in the studio later on. He did that poll, showing that of the two candidates, it's Mr Jenrick who may have the best chance of causing damage to Sir Keir Starmer, taking a majority down to the point where Sir Keir Starmer wouldn't win outright. But neither candidate would beat Starmer clearly. It would be in the realms of a hung parliament, and neither candidate can get rid of Reform. In fact, Reform going from 5 seats to 24 under Robert Jenrick and 5 to 25 under Kemi Badenoch. Now, both candidates have said no deals. Both candidates said they'd like to eliminate, get rid of Reform. That doesn't seem to be happening.
Well, look, we're over 4 years out from a general election, at least. We're a long, long way off that. What we need to be focusing on now is renewing the Conservative Party, restoring ourselves in terms of our sense of ideals and values like family, business, personal responsibility, defending the nation, all of the things that we are normally very, very good at and known for. And then we can get on with the job of actually seeking to regain power. It is a long way off the next general election. So any poll that indicated that we were set to win, I'd be highly dubious about, given the fact that we've only recently suffered the most devastating landslide that my party has seen. So therefore, we do have the time to regain that trust. But this is now a question that Conservative members have to answer. Who do they think is the person that stands out? Who do they think is the most formidable, the different person that can really set these topics alight and actually re-excite the electorate about the Conservative Party and our values? And for me, that's Kemi Badenoch, and I hope that that is the answer that other members come to as well. It's certainly the answer that I'm hearing back from members that I'm speaking to.
Now, Michelle, certainly for a lot of GB News viewers, leaving the ECHR is a topic that really gets them going. They feel we're tied to Strasbourg, we're tied to the European Convention on Human Rights. It prevents us from being sovereign, particularly around areas of asylum. Robert Jenrick has been keen to make this a debate of leave or remain, which is ironic because he voted to remain in the European Union. I digress. On this point, is that something you think there's sufficient momentum within the party ranks, within the membership, to cause problems for Kemi Badenoch?
So this isn't a one-issue vote, and I think our membership appreciate that. And there were many topics. Immigration was certainly the top of the list as to why voters were angry and disappointed with the Conservative Party. But focusing just on one issue, I think, is the wrong thing to do. We have to look at the person in the round and what they stand for and their ideals and their beliefs. Now, Kemi's position on this is much more nuanced. She has said it's not the silver bullet. She's not said rule it out indefinitely. She said that isn't the only lever that you can pull and that it will definitely solve the problem. And I think that's quite a practical, common sense response, and one which is very pragmatic. And we would hope that the next leader is going to be somebody that's displaying common sense and pragmatism to actually get things done. And what the British public, I think, have got fed up about, and I've heard this from being on the doorstep day in and day out in my own constituency during the election, is the fact that we made so many promises when it came to immigration. We didn't actually deliver. So now the time is to ask, who's the person that's going to deliver, and who's the person that's going to actually restore that trust of the voters?
Well, it's an hour and 41 minutes until the big chucker down, and we're tossing a coin shortly to find out who goes first. Will it be Kemi? Will it be Robert Jenrick to take to that stage first? We'll find out in about 10 minutes' time. Michelle Dondon, an absolute delight to have you on the show. Thank you very much for joining us here on GB News. Thank you.
Lovely to chat. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you. Now, time is ticking on your chance to win £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway, our biggest ever giveaway, as there's just 2 weeks remaining to get your entry in. Now, make sure that you do not miss out. Here's all the details you need to try and trouser it.
We love making our audience big cash winners, and you really could be next with £36,000 tax-free cash in your on demand. Good luck.
Fill your boots now. Don't go anywhere, because shortly we'll be tossing that coin to find out who goes first on tonight's big debate, big event on GB News. Will it be Kemi Badenoch? Will it be Robert Jenrick? Chris Hope will be tossing the coin. That's coming next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Some controversial film news. Someone has hired an actor who's white. What the hell is going on?
Let me just fix my hair. Let me just come away. So, Wuthering Heights film stirs controversy after white actor, he's white, chosen to play Heathcliff.
Is that your Humza Yusuf impersonator?
That is, but yes, that's my Chinese accent. Experts have gone, oh no, there's a lot of, in recent years, he's definitely black or mixed race because he was found in Liverpool. And as you know, everybody in Liverpool is black or mixed race.
No, I mean, have you read the novel?
God, no.
Right, well, I have. And the novel itself does say, quite explicitly, that he is dark-skinned. Yeah. That the implication is that he's of Romani origin. So he wouldn't be whiter than white, you know. So, I mean...
that's fine. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that casting... But on the other hand...
This guy's Spanish. His origin's Spanish.
You remember when there was a black Anne Boleyn for a Channel 5 miniseries? That seems to be more egregious, because, I tell you what, Anne Boleyn definitely wasn't black.
You racist. No, I almost feel sorry in this story, because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't now. Because if they'd have, like, it's not like he's a bit of an anti-hero, right? It's not like a good all-round.
He's not a good guy.
So if you go, right, we definitely need to cast someone black for this. What? Why are you picking just black people to play someone with so many character flaws? Or you go, why?
Like they did with Darth Vader.
Yes, that's right.
He was played by the Green Cross Code Man. Okay. Just the voice was done by...
That's true. Yeah. Yes, it was the Green Cross Code Man. I wonder what they were saying there.
Have you ever seen the videos of the original audio Star Wars?
No.
So you've got... I can't remember his name, but you've got the Green Cross Code Man going like, I find your lack of faith disturbing. Yeah. No, Luke, I am your father.
They should have left it as it was.
This is the difference to me. We're talking about Star Wars. You're like, oh, have you read Bronte, Wuthering, whatever?
She only wrote one novel, Josh. You could... do with the courtesy of reading it.
I'll read it straight after I finish your one.
And it's actually brilliant.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News. Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tonight as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tonight. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:24 here on GB News with me, Martin Daubney. Now, ahead of the Chancellor's budget, the greatly anticipated, in fact feared budget on October the 30th, GB News' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire has been speaking to business leaders and pub goers about some of the challenges the alcohol sector is facing.
Cut alcohol duty and back Scotch whisky. That's the message from Scottish business leaders ahead of the October budget. Rachel Reeves is being urged to lower the duty in spirits after Jeremy Hunt increased it by 10.1% last August, the biggest rise of its kind in 40 years, topping up the tax burden on a bottle of Scotch to over 70%. HMRC says the move denied the public purse nearly £300 million in its first year. Despite the tax jump, pub owner Mike Henderson says minimum unit pricing has put blended whisky back on the menu.
A bottle that did cost £13, £14 is now nearly £20. So people are willing to come into a pub. They can get a malt, £5 in it for a malt, and £2.60 for a blend.
It's worth saying that this isn't just any old pub. Camera, the campaign for Real Ale, has crowned the Hill End Tavern as Scotland's best pub 2 years running. The biggest change felt here is from Jeremy Hunt's draft relief, also introduced last August, making pub pints that little bit cheaper. With the pub quiz about to swing into action, do these punters A, stick with Real Ale at a knockdown price, or B, stump up extra for that pricey chaser?
It's a cheeky chaser, maybe on occasion. Mostly it's just the ales. It's a good pint, it's a good session pint, and it's a great price, so I'm happy with the ales.
Most of the time we drink beer, actually, but if we win, we might go into a wee whisky as a celebratory drink.
Not changed my habits at all. Just we order what we want, basically, whether it's whisky or ale. So.
The Scotch Whisky Association has appealed to Rachel Reeves to reverse the economic damage done by her predecessor. But with UK alcohol deaths on the rise and at a 15-year high here in Scotland, it shouldn't be surprising if yet another cash-strapped Chancellor sees the drinks industry as easy pickings. Tony Maguire, GB News.
Thank you. Now, some recent news that has come in relation to the death of Liam Payne. And the Argentinian prosecutor's office has said that Liam Payne died of multiple traumas and internal and external bleeding caused by a fall from a third-floor balcony in Buenos Aires. And this comes as Liam Payne's family earlier this afternoon released a statement saying they are completely heartbroken at their loss. And they said that Liam will forever live in our hearts, and we'll remember him for his kind, funny and his brave soul. We're going to now speak with a good friend of Liam Payne, Ant Middleton. Ant, welcome to the show. I saw a very moving tweet you put out earlier, and of course you reflected in that about the time you spent together in that documentary you made back in 2019. You spent a lot of time with Liam. You got to know Liam really well. Tell us about your insights, your friendship and your memories of him.
Yeah, when I spent 4 days with him on my show, Straight Talking with Ant Middleton, we spent 4 days and 4 nights in Namibia, and we just spoke about, his upbringing, his fame, his boy band days, and ultimately, also when he left the boy band, I believe that he lost that sense of belonging, and he found it hard to regain that identity. But I was super shocked to hear the news, and we continued on our relationship throughout after the show. And I sort of looked at him as a little brother, because he's very much like me when I was young. You know, I was outgoing, I was very positive. You know, you hang around Liam, you're going to get some really, really good energy. He's super positive, super fun to be around, always smiling, as you can see there. So, and I was the same as a youngster. So I suppose I saw myself in him. And then after the show, when he opened up, and he opened up quite a lot behind the scenes that he didn't really want to say on TV. And what I noticed was, that, you know, he went through that young age of being a superstar, you know, of selling out stadiums, selling out arenas. Then all of a sudden, you know, that comes to an end. It's like, who am I? You know, where's my belonging? Where do I belong in life now? You know, everything that I know has sort of gone, well, not gone, but, you know, has come to a halt. I think he really, really struggled with that. And so after the show that we done, you know, I've been continuing, you know, that relationship with him. He'd call me up when he was, you know, by himself, and I'd go around. I only lived about an hour away from him, so I'd just pop round. We'd have some food, you know, he'd chat. And I suppose with Liam, one thing that I really noticed is that, you know, he was forced into isolation, you know, because of the megastar that, you know, One Direction were. You know, it's not like, you know, celebrities like myself that, you know, I can go out. Yeah, I might get pestered a little bit, but, you know, they couldn't really go out. So I think the isolation didn't really do Liam any good, you know, because he was in his own head. But he was just a lovely, lovely guy, super positive to be around, and he would be sorely missed.
And there's some beautiful pictures there of you with Liam in happier times, just like laughing away, such joy, such life, you know, filled with such hope and happiness. Look at that, and just the time you spent together. I wanted to ask you, Anne, a lot of former servicemen we talked to on this show, and you've talked about this yourself very openly in the past, you miss that brotherhood of being with your band of brothers, be it in the services or be it in a boy band, different circumstances, but nevertheless, some people are much, much better, or they are not, when they're surrounded in a close-knit group. And others just aren't so suited just to being on their own.
Yeah, we spoke about that in depth, actually. We spoke about being part of that, you know, of an organisation, being part of a group and bouncing off each other. And when you had a bad day, your team member, you know, would lift you up and be there for you. And I suppose when I talk about that isolation, it's exactly that. But also, you know, the identity as well. You know, not only have you lost that camaraderie or that team dynamic, but you've also lost your identity, because ultimately what you're doing without even realizing it, you know, when that boy band broke up, they're all competing against each other. You know, who's going to get the next the next record deal? Who's going to get the next sponsorship? Why is that person getting it and why is that person not getting it? So I suppose, you know, once you leave that group as well, you become competitors. So you got to really look at things like in that light as well, because then, you know, you talk about the pressure, talk about the stresses, they just amplify when that happens, and it's not a very good position to be in at such a young age like Liam was. But Liam was very talented. You know, anything that he put his hand to, he was phenomenal at. You know, he was one of them those annoying people that he was just good at everything that he'd done, because I'd go around his house and he'd be painting and drawing, and, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if some of his paintings came out now and some of his drawings came to light, because he's a very talented painter and a very talented drawer. And I suppose that's what, being in isolation, he sort of went to as well. He went to obviously his music, you know, producing at home, to painting and drawing. And he actually done a very good painting of myself, which I'm going to have to dig out and find. But a super talented guy, such a loss at 31 years old. And, you know, you look at the loss, you know, the father, son, friend, you know, inspiration and motivator, you know, hope. You know, people just looked at Liam in all of those ways. And yeah, it's still hard to get my head around.
And Millicent, thank you very much for joining us and sharing those precious memories with us here on GB News. Thank you very much. Take care, mate. Thanks.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Pleasure. There's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock. Now, could we see a fuel duty tax grab by Chancellor Rachel Reeves in her October 30th budget? Well, one man is so concerned by this, and he's the founder of Fair Fuel UK. He'll join us shortly here on GB News. But first, here's your headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. It's 5:33. These are your headlines. Members of Israel's Security Cabinet have been informed that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar is very likely dead after an operation in Gaza targeting 3 militants. Meanwhile, Israeli TV stations are also reporting his death. In a statement, the IDF said that the identities of those killed have yet to be confirmed and say there were no indications that Israeli hostages were present at the site of the attack. If confirmed, the 62-year-old's death would mark a significant victory for Israel amid a series of high-profile assassinations of enemy leaders in recent months. Believed to be the architect of the October 7th attack on Israel that ignited the current conflict, Sinwar has long been a top target for Israeli forces. Meanwhile, Reuters is reporting Hamas sources say indications suggest he has been killed in an Israeli operation in Gaza. Back in the UK, a Tory councillor's wife has been jailed for 2.5 years after stirring up racial hatred against asylum seekers on the day of the Southport attacks. Lucy Connolly, married to Conservative councillor Raymond Connolly, posted a violent message on X calling for a mass deportation and arson against hotels housing immigrants. She wrote the post on the day 3 young girls were killed in a knife attack in Southport. The post was deleted after 2 hours and she later apologised, but Connolly was today sentenced to 31 months imprisonment at Birmingham Crown Court. The family of former One Direction star Liam Payne has expressed their heartbreak following his death at the age of 31. In a statement released through a spokeswoman, his family remembered Liam as kind, funny and a brave soul. Fans have gathered outside the hotel in Buenos Aires where he died, lighting candles and leaving flowers in an impromptu visual to pay tribute to the music icon. Liam rose to fame as part of One Direction, one of the biggest pop groups in the world, before their indefinite hiatus in 2016. Thousands of migrants could be granted asylum in the UK as the government pushes to clear a huge backlog of applications. The Refugee Council estimates the number of pending asylum claims could reach almost 120,000 by January, following Labour's decision to scrap the Rwanda plan. New analysis suggests that processing the backlog could see over 62,000 more people recognised as refugees in the UK. It comes as Downing Street says it's committed to ending the use of asylum hotels, despite reports the Home Office may reopen some that were previously closed. And Kemi Badenoch says her bid for Conservative leadership is a grassroots campaign, taking aim at her rival Robert Jenrick's more media-focused approach. As the two contenders compete to replace Rishi Sunak, the Shadow Housing Secretary says the Tories need to regain voters lost to Reform and the Liberal Democrats. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick outlined his vision for a smaller state and lower taxes, arguing that returning the spend on benefits to a pre-pandemic level could help a tax cut. Moments ago, Mr Jenrick made his arrival for our GB News special programme. From 7 p.m. tonight, both candidates will make their pitches to Tory members in a show moderated by our political editor, Christopher Hope. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3002 and €1.2007. The price of gold is £2,066 and 92 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's closed the day at 8,385 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Now, there's not long to go now. Hang on to your hats because Robert Jenrick has just arrived at tonight's venue. There we are, pictures from a short while ago. He's arrived at tonight's venue to face off, of course, against Kemi Badenoch. That's at 7 p.m. That's an hour and 21 minutes time. And join me now in the studio, hoving interviewer delight in person, Michelle Juby.
Hello. Look at this, I can touch you. We're so close, I can touch you. We normally just communicate down a screen, don't we? What a treat for us.
That'd be a sackable offence to the BBC, by the way.
Actually, yeah.
Now, you've got the golden hour before the big showdown at 7. How are you going to get the crowd revved up?
Well, I've got a great panel. I've got Kelvin McKenzie, Tom Buick. I want to know, do you think the Tories tried to be a little bit too clever, trying to play games to make sure James cleverly was in the final and it all backfired on them? I want to put that to Kelvin. He'll have strong views. Also, this Liam Payne thing as well. Kelvin McKenzie, of course, he was the editor of the Sun newspaper for a very long time. Many people are blaming the media today for what happened very tragically to Liam Payne last night. So I want to explore that too as well. Also, I'll be doing all the stuff you'd expect, the 62,000 migrants and so on. But young people, particularly young boys, when they pass their driving test, there's a question being put today because of the inquest of that tragedy in Wales, where people are saying you should have like a staggered graduated driving licence. You shouldn't be able to take passengers initially.
Yeah, good idea. Look, you got the warm-up to the big event. Michelle Juby, 6 till 7 from this studio tonight. Great to see you in person. Always a pleasure. Michelle Juby, 6 till 7. If you want to get in touch, of course, who you want to win this debate tonight, gbnews.com/your say. I'll try and read out some of them before the end of the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Business News Channel.
Hi there, welcome to another update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine for most of us during the rest of the day, with many showers clearing away, but under clear skies and with light winds as the isobars open out, we will see widespread mist and fog forming by dawn. Now, this little occluded front here is providing a focus for thicker cloud in the north and west, and a few showers continuing into the evening and the first part of the night, especially for central and northern Scotland, 1 or 2 for Wales and the southwest. Away from any showers, however, clear spells and with light winds, temperatures will fall into the mid to high single figures. And with a relatively soggy ground still, that's going to lead to widespread mist and fog forming by dawn. Largely hill fog for parts of Scotland and northern England, but across the Midlands, southern and eastern England, as well as Wales, we'll see low-level fog. Could cause transport issues in the morning. Watch out if you're driving during the early part of the day. But for Northern Ireland, the wind's already picking up. Outbreaks of rain and cloud moving in here. Likewise for western Scotland. And those winds are going to be a key concern through Friday for northwest Scotland, with 50 to 60 mile-per-hour wind gusts strengthening during the morning and into the afternoon, and accompanied by heavy rain. That's all also associated with high tides, so could be some coastal flooding for the west and northwest of Scotland. Meanwhile, after any mist and fog's cleared across central and eastern parts of England, a sunny day is expected, 17 Celsius. But for Wales, western England and for the rest of Scotland and Northern Ireland, we're going to see outbreaks of rain steadily progressing west to east during the afternoon and into the evening. Then into the weekend, a fine start to Saturday for many, but it turns increasingly windy with some potentially disruptive winds on Sunday.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays heading towards Belfast on the M1 in Antrim, of course. One lane still closed just before junction 2, the Balmoral turn-off at the scene of a multi-vehicle collision. That is having a knock-on effect on the southbound A12 back into the city centre. And in Staffordshire, heading out of Stoke-on-Trent, the A500, the D road, of course, that's closed northbound. A lorry shed its load just off the Basford roundabout at the A53. On the M5 in Worcestershire, one lane's closed northbound just after the M50 following a collision. And on the M4 in Berkshire, one lane's closed eastbound. A car's broken down at the Maidenhead exit, junction 8, the 404M turn-off. In East London, heading into town, the carriageway is blocked at the Prince Regent Lane underpass at Newham following an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. 5:43 now. Ahead of the Chancellor's budget on October the 30th, an event was held earlier this week in Parliament calling on Rachel Reeves not to hike fuel duty for motorists. Now, the man behind the campaign was the founder of Fair Fuel UK, Howard Cox, who was joined by MPs, most notably the former Home Secretary Priti Patel, but was joined only by 2 Lib Dems and 1 Labour Party MP. Well, I'm joined now by Howard Fox, the founder of Fair Fuel UK, a man who's done more for motorists than perhaps anybody in Christendom. Howard Cox, very, very telling, is it not, that you invited openly all MPs and only 1 came from the Labour Party? Does that tell you that motorists are in for bad news on October the 30th?
That's spot on, Martin. Thank you for having me on. The thing is about this, it wasn't just me inviting them, because I got our supporters to actually contact their local MP, and something like 10 to 12,000 of our supporters contacted their MP. And so I restricted it to a number because I quite easily, if I'd sent it to all 1.7 million, I think their assistants would not be too happy answering the emails, something like 3,000 or 4,000 each. But they all got about an average of 20 to 30 emails each, politely saying, would you come along for 5 minutes and come and just tell us where you stand on fuel duty? And they had to fill a little form in. It said, do you want it increased, frozen or cut? That's all we asked. And I was delighted. We had about 55 Tory MPs, and Priti Patel's always been a supporter of Fair Fuel UK. There's a lot of other good guys there, guys and girls from the... But as you quite rightly said, there was only 1 Labour guy. And he didn't complete anything, he didn't say anything, he just came along to say hello. He is actually a bit of a petrol head, but he came personally, really. I asked him a simple question. Where's the rest of your lot? And he said, and he kept and it was basically, I think the Labour Party have whipped against Fair Fuel UK. Don't go to that meeting, which they went against their own constituencies' wishes. And we're talking about a lot of rural communities, and I know a lot of Labour MPs that are petrol heads, and they were told not to come along. So it's disgusting, and you're dead right. On October the 30th, almost certainly there's going to be a 5p increase in fuel duty. Almost certainly. That's a reversal of Rishi Sunak's 22 cut he made. And so, yeah, watch this space. I'm writing a lot of articles at the moment. I'm an article on The Sun on Saturday. And that we've done 3 major things. We've done a poll, and we've asked our supporters to contact their MP to visit this, to come to this event. The third thing, which has just been launched today, is I'm asking our supporters to email Rachel Reeves. And I'm opening the flood barriers to that one.
OK, well, let's see if the Chancellor takes notice, because I know you do a lot of work for motorists. Howard Cox, thank you very much for joining us on the show. As ever, an absolute pleasure. Thank you very, very much. I've got some breaking news now to bring you, and that is that Israel's foreign minister says that their forces have killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Just to repeat, Israel's foreign minister says that their forces have killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Now, in a few minutes' time, we'll be discussing a new poll done by Electoral Calculus, which finds that Robert Jenrick, as Tory leader, would prevent a Starmer Commons majority. That's next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday, we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A furious online debate has been sparked after, well, let's just say a rather large man, I mean, he really was big, was snapped trying to fit into his seat on a plane.
It's led to some to ask whether obese passengers should have to pay for extra plane seats so they don't inconvenience others.
Some say, though, that's cruel. So should plus-size passengers pay extra for plane seats? Let's talk to former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller, who's in Stratford-upon-Avon, and the director of All About Obesity, Sarah LeBrock, who's in beautiful Harrogate. Good to see you both this morning. Sarah, what do you think?
Well, we've had this debate before with Steve and I, to be fair, and I think it's one of those things where planes are just not fit for purpose anymore. So people's bodies have been growing over the years. We know this, the obesity rates are increasing, etc. But what's happening to planes is the seats are decreasing in size. So they're just not fit for purpose and not fit for the population. So I think it's just one of these things where we need to be more empathetic to people, that they're trying to fit into an environment that isn't shaped for them at all. So I think we do need to kind of say, well, what's right here? Is it the person not being able to fit in the seat, or is it the seat not being fit for purpose for the person? And I think we need to really, look at things from that perspective as well. Instead of thinking the person's doing something wrong, how about the environment might be doing something wrong?
Steve?
It's not about blaming, but the message you can't put out, in my opinion, is that it's okay to be obese and don't worry about it. You see, what I'm saying here is free plane seats. If you're offering free plane seats, an extra seat, that's going to normalise obesity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Some breaking news to bring you now, and it's this. Israel's foreign minister says that their forces have killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, and celebrations are already starting to break out across Israel at that news. Just to quickly repeat that, the Israeli foreign minister says that their forces have killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, and as you can see on your screen, celebrations are already starting to break out across Israel at the news that the man they're calling Israel's bin Laden has been terminated. Now, new polling suggests that former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick will take more seats from Labour than leadership rival Kemi Badenoch if a snap election was called tomorrow. And that would mean there would be a hung parliament if Mr Jenrick was the Tory leader. Well, at around 7 p.m. tonight, Badenoch and Jenrick will go head-to-head live on GB News. But let's first get more on that poll. And joining me now is Martin Baxter from Electoral Calculus. Martin, always a pleasure. So we're moments away from the big showdown, an hour and 10. Tell us quickly, if Mr Jenrick were to be the leader, he'd make the most impact.
Good evening, Martin. Yes, that's right. We did an MRP poll where we asked people hypothetically how they would vote if Kemi Badenoch was leader of the Conservative Party, and also how they would vote if Robert Jenrick was leader. And the results were fairly close, and they are driven by mostly by Labour declining in support since July. Keir Starmer has not had a happy time as Prime Minister. But on our figures, Labour's lead over the Conservatives would be 1% less with Robert Jenrick. It would be 6 under Badenoch and 5 under Jenrick, and that would translate under Robert Jenrick on our figures to Labour being 14 seats short of a majority. So Labour would have a minority government if Robert Jenrick was leader on these figures, whereas if Kemi Badenoch was leader, Labour would have a small majority of only 14 seats, which is still much less than they actually got in July, where they had a landslide majority.
And Martin Baxter, that still means that neither candidate could beat outright Sir Keir Starmer. The best at present, of course, we're a long way off an election, would be a hung parliament. Potentially then, we're looking towards reform. What impact would both of the candidates have on reform? Because Kemi Badenoch said no deals. Robert Jenrick said he wants to make reform redundant. In your poll, what happens?
Well, reformers still are doing even better than they were doing in July. They're up a few points. We think they'll get in the high 20s in seats if there were an election today. So it is difficult for the Conservatives because they really need to gather votes back from two directions. They need a lot of votes back from reformers. Reformers sitting there over 15% support, but they also need to gather votes back from the Liberal Democrats. So a challenge for the Conservative leader, and it is a real challenge, is to get votes in from both directions, because really the Conservatives need to increase their vote share from both the directions that they lost it back in July.
and fascinating prospects. I was speaking to Jacob Rees-Mogg earlier in the show, and I said, what would that mean if there were a hung parliament? Could there potentially be a dalliance of hopping into bed with reform with Nigel Farage? And he said, you know what, we got into bed with the Liberal Democrats, with Nick Clegg. Stranger things have happened. Martin Baxter, an excellent poll as ever. Thank you very, very much for joining us late on in the show. And there's just over an hour to go now until that big showdown. That's at 7 o'clock. You can see on your screen there, decision time, the race to lead. Both candidates are now at the venue. They are getting primed to face the members in the audience. They're also being primed to face our political editor, Chris Hope. He'll be the compere tonight, the ringmaster of this event, putting questions to them and also from GB News viewers. Now, up next for the hour before that debate, of course, is Jubes & Co. broadcasting from this studio here in the heart of Westminster. Don't miss that. Now, I'm taking some time off. I'm back on Monday, the 28th of October. I'm off to keep it sweet in Crete. A well-earned break, but never mind me. Stick around for Jubes & Co. and do not miss 7 p.m. That's GB News exclusive event. Take care, have a great night, and I'll see you a week Monday.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to another update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine for most of us during the rest of the day, with many showers clearing away, but under clear skies and with light winds as the isobars open out, we will see widespread mist and fog forming by dawn. Now, this little occluded front here is providing a focus for thicker cloud in the north and west, and a few showers continuing into the evening and the first part of the night, especially for central and northern Scotland, 1 or 2 for Wales and the southwest. Away from any showers, however, clear spells, and with light winds, temperatures will fall into the mid to high single figures. And with a relatively soggy ground still, that's going to lead to widespread mist and fog forming by dawn. Largely hill fog for parts of Scotland and northern England, but across the Midlands, southern and eastern England, as well as Wales, we'll see low-level fog. Could cause transport issues in the morning. Watch out if you're driving during the early part of the day. But for Northern Ireland, the wind's already picking up. Outbreaks of rain and cloud moving in here. Likewise for western Scotland. And those winds are going to be a key concern through Friday for northwest Scotland, with 50 to 60 mile-per-hour wind gusts strengthening during the morning and into the afternoon, and accompanied by heavy rain. That's all also associated with high tides, so could be some coastal flooding for the west and northwest of Scotland. Meanwhile, after any mist and fog's cleared across central and eastern parts of England, a sunny day is expected, 17